repeatedly about this, both in this case and the other one. I was gonna ask if you could come up with some measure which Mr. DiCiero actually just answers questions, instead of getting up there and expounding on whatever comes into his mind. He's at least 4 or 5 occasions gratuitously said improper and inflammatory things about Mr. McDonald, and if you know, almost was, after that comment about it was dirty stuff, I almost asked for a mistrial. I believe we're getting very close to it on several key points here. I don't fault my colleague. I've been complaining about the bias in this case and the motive that the guy that started since it began. I know my colleagues not in complete control of Mr. DiCiero, but I asked that you admonish Mr. DiCiero and the state to just answer the questions he's asked.
All right, so I will remind Mr. DiCiero to answer the questions that he has asked. And I appreciate your concern. Many of the responses he was giving seem to be narrative responses to the questions that were asked. And I understand that you don't necessarily like the answers that are given, but that's why I continue to ask for a legal basis to sustain any objection that would be to improper testimony. So I will caution him to answer the questions. I would ask Mr. Raman to remind him to answer the questions, and if he starts to go afield, to perhaps redirect him back to the question at hand.
Sure.
I don't believe there has been any prejudice so great that would lend itself to a mistrial at this point. But I also don't find that the animus is so great that there is something else that needs to be done. Certainly we're not done with the testimony, we're going to trial, and you can propose a jury instruction if you like, Mr. Mueller, and I will consider that to give, at the time we give jury instructions, or if it continues, another instruction mid-trial. Which reminds me, I do need your instructions by tomorrow at noon, your jury instructions.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay?
So I'll get it knocked out about 1 a.m. this morning.
Okay, well, that's how it goes when you're in trial. All right, is Mr. DiCiero outside?
You should be.
We've got to grab him, put him on the stand, and we'll bring the jury in. Oh, I don't know where Greg is. Oh, okay. Someone might want to step out and grab him. Oh, thank you. Welcome back, if you could take the witness stand. Thank you. Thank you. All right. You must be waiting for the jury still.
Jury is all present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. DiCiero, remind me that you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Raman, you can proceed with your examination when you're ready.
Mark, when we broke, I was about to start with State Exhibit 1, which is the recording state. You treat the Michael Silva, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's publishing through the court's audio system, State Exhibit 1. All right, so Mark, I'm not going to play the entire recording of each one. I'm just going to play, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds of the beginning of each clip, so you can verify this is in fact what you heard in this drive and provided on over to law enforcement, okay?
Okay.
So I'm playing from clip 1 of State Exhibit 1. So Mark, is that one of the calls that was located in Michael McDonald Google Drive?
It is.
Judge like a foundation, assumes facts not evidence. And we'll establish that that's a phone call, period.
Or was that one of the audio recordings that you located in Michael McDonald Google Drive?
Yes.
All right, for the record, that objection was sustained but clarified by Mr. Raman. You may proceed.
Playing what's been labeled as 02, call number 2, or audio number 2.
Hi, baby. Why did you cancel the appointment, Candace? Michael, you didn't tell me that you were making an appointment for her. And what is the point of going in there? I want to make sure.
Marcus, is that one of the audio files that was located in Michael McDonald's Google Drive?
Yes.
Okay. Playing file number 3.
I've done it already.
I promise you, Peter, it's moved at all.
Okay, are you going to pay child support like you're supposed to? Are you going to return my journals and my fucking grandmother's stamp?
Mark, is that one of the audio recordings that was located in Michael McDonald's Google Drive?
It is, yes.
Okay. Playing V number 4.
And do what the judge asked you to do. And if you can't do that, then you will only see them the second and fourth weekends of the month.
Candace, I'm not going to accept what the judge.
Mark, is that one of the audio files that was located in Michael McDonald's Google Drive?
Yes.
And the final one, number 5.
They have to give you 2 weekends a month. It's almost impossible. But guess what? They gave it to me because they see what an unhealthy.
And is that one of the audio files that you found in Michael McDonald's Google Drive?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if I could, I'd like you to explain how these end up getting in the possession of law enforcement. How are these provided to the police?
Sure. So, after the first YouTube post in February of 2018, after I realized those audio recordings were in the Google Drive, I let Candace know that the links were shared with me, that the recordings that were used in that YouTube video that Mr. McDonald had produced came from that Google Drive. She needed to be aware of those.
Let me ask you a quicker question. Do you have contact with a officer of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department at some point?
Yes,
And is that Detective Kolby Kartchner?
it is, yes.
And regarding Detective Kartchner, were you the one who originally called him?
No,
Okay. Did somebody else call him?
yes.
Did you end up contacting Detective Kartchner, or did he contact you?
He contacted me.
Okay. And do you remember when about that would have been?
Would have been shortly after, let me think about that. In March was the reposting of the video, so it was after March. I'm guessing about April or May of 2018.
For indulgence. May I first witness?
You may.
Mark, I mistakenly handed this to you earlier this morning, but I'm handing to you now. It states proposing with it too. Does this relate to what we're talking about?
Yes, these are email exchanges between myself and the detective, sharing the audio files. This is in April of 2018.
Okay, and leaf through it, make sure that this is an accurate copy of those things.
Yes,
Okay,
it is.
so is this correspondence between you and Detective Kartchner?
Yes,
Is it a sharing of the audio files that you obtained to the detective?
yes, it is.
And in the back, are there other materials that you sent him?
Yes, there was a voluntary statement he had asked for that I prepared and attached that document to the email.
Okay. And is this an accurate copy of a printout of the correspondence from your email account?
Yes.
Can I move for admission to?
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit will be admitted. How many pages is it, Mr. Raman, for the record?
Okay.
thank you.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Okay, we're looking at the first page of State's Exhibit 2. What are we looking at?
Email from myself to Detective Kartchner, dated April 12th, 2018, 8:19 p.m. And this is the first, it's attached as the first recording.
Okay, did you send that unsolicited to him, or did he ask you for this?
He had asked for it.
And then there's something, so it says to Kolby Kartchner, and there's the email address, right?
Yes,
And then there's a BCC under it. Who's that?
that is Candace's email address,
Okay.
Candace McDonald.
Is BCC known as blind carbon copy?
Yes.
Okay. What is the reason that you attached Candace on this correspondence?
Candace had initially reached out to the detective, and I just wanted Candace to be in the loop on all the communications I had with the detective.
Okay. What is the attachment to this particular email?
It is the first recording that you had played just a few minutes ago in an M4A format.
Okay, what is an M4A?
Honestly, I'm not real sure. I don't know.
Okay. It's got a musical note on the icon, right?
Yeah,
What does that mean?
it's an audio file, and it's a specific format of an audio file.
Okay. In your, and then if we go on to page 2, is that another recording being sent?
That is number 2, and it's being sent as an MP3 file.
Okay. What about the third page?
Recording number 3 of 5 in an MP3 format.
Okay. And then page number 4?
It's like we skipped to number 5 there.
Okay.
Recording number 5, MP3.
And the next one?
And then 6, recording number 6, MP3.
And the last?
Recording number 7, MP3.
And then what is the, I think this is the 6th page in the document.
Yes, this is an email to Detective Kartchner. Candace is BCC'd on this email. That is a link to Mr. McDonald's Google Drive, one of the links that he'd sent me
Okay.
in July of 2017.
And next page?
This is an email from Detective Kartchner to me.
Oh, sorry. Couldn't tell the jury could see that. Okay, my apologies.
Looks like he's responding to the voluntary statement that I had sent to him. He's thanking me for sending it. So it looks like, oh no, I'm sorry. He's sending me a copy of the voluntary statement to fill out.
Okay, so that blank voluntary doc X, that's just like a form?
That's a Microsoft Word, form for me to open on my end and fill out.
Okay. And then down at the bottom of this page, what is that?
That is me attaching the statement that I had prepared for Detective Kartchner, and then a zip file of all the recordings. Zip being a format where you can condense the recordings into a smaller size and send them all at once.
Okay.
And they can be opened on the other end and in their original form.
And then there's some correspondence on the 9th page, in the middle, between the detective and yourself regarding playability of a recording.
Yeah, April 12th from Detective Kartchner. Got my voluntary statement. The only thing that would open for me is the illegal recording MPEG file. Maybe if you can reformat the others to MPEG, I could open the rest. So he was having problems opening the audio files in the format which I sent them.
Like the N4A one?
Yeah,
Okay. Did you end up converting audio files for the detective so that he could play them?
I did.
And how did you do that?
I had a software program on my computer. It's called Wondershare, and it converts audio formats, it converts video formats.
Okay. And then on the last page, page 10, there's more correspondence between yourself and the detective, right?
Yes. And he
And-
says, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
On April 13th, he says, okay, that seems to have worked. I can now play all the files. Thank you for your assistance in time. And then underneath that is one sent from me at 7-Eleven, just FYI, and I'm not sure what's attached there.
Looks like it's a forwarded message or something.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay. So this is the bulk of the correspondence between you and the detective?
it is,
And you attached all the audio files that you had seen?
correct.
Now, that program that you used to convert the audio files, you said it was Wondershare?
Yes.
Does that have any, do you have any ability with that to cut portions of the calls out?
No,
Okay, so is it a simple file conversion?
it's a simple file conversion that I originally got to convert my family court hearing videos, because I have a Mac. Those hearing videos are in a Windows media format, so I needed to convert those to a format that Apple would play. So it was just to convert files, no editing, no opening, any of that.
Okay. Now, with regard to the YouTube videos that you discussed, there was 2 YouTube videos you say were posted on Michael McDonald's channel, his YouTube channel.
Yes,
And did you post some noting or links to those videos on the Court Watchers Facebook page?
on Nevada Court Watchers, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, we just need to make a quick reaction.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we just got back, but anyone wants to stand while we're doing this, you're welcome to take a little comfort stretch, especially after lunch. Sometimes it's good to stand up.
Proceeding judges get contempt Raman all the time.
I find you in contempt. I am going to incarcerate you.
Any statement that you make is under penalty of perjury.
No, that's not how that works.
We will take this case under submission.
That would require proof by very significant evidence.
You both did a good job bringing all this to my attention. I'm going to make a record about you in a minute. You need to sit down and be quiet.
Then I believe Mr. McDonald has an, sorry, Mr. Mueller has an objection, which
I'm ready for a person that can make an objection. Wait, Mr. Mueller, your objection has been withdrawn. And what is it, is this Mr. Raman?
This is exhibit number 6.
Oh, thank you.
may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mark, familiar with this document? 2 pages.
Yes.
And what is it?
These are 2 posts, or screenshots, a post from the Nevada Court Watchers page with regard to the YouTube videos that we've been talking about.
Okay, did you make these posts?
Yes.
And is there dates on when you made these posts?
Yeah, the first is February 5th. Doesn't indicate a year, but that would have been 2017 or 2018. And then the second is March 11th, also would have been 2018.
Are these fair and accurate copies?
Yes.
Move for admission 6.
Any objection?
No objection.
Those will be admitted.
Move to publish?
You may.
All right, so I'm showing you exhibit 6, first page.
Okay.
And is that what it looks like when somebody posts on a Facebook page for Nevada Court Watchers?
Yes.
Okay, and in this one, you stated not the path you go down a month before trial, day after being MVP of the Stevie Bowl, what do I know? What's the Stevie Bowl?
Innuendo on Nevada Court Watchers with regard to Steve Sampson,
Okay.
head of Veterans in Politics.
You don't particularly care for him, do you?
Not especially.
Okay. And then there's a link here.
Yes.
What is that link for?
That is the link to the first video that Mr. McDonald posted on YouTube. McDonald v. McDonald, bitter divorce with evidence.
Okay. So if somebody were to click on that, it would redirect them to the YouTube video?
It would.
And you posted this on February 5th?
Correct.
So that, is that around the time when that video was originally brought to your attention on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second page. What is this?
This is a link to the second video. It has the words, "You're being recorded now" into the video. March 11th, 2018.
Okay, and you kind of give some commentary on why you think that is poorly done?
Yeah, so from a group member, if I remember right, another member of Nevada Court Watchers told me about it.
Objection, you're saying?
Sustained.
You posted this though?
I did.
Okay. And the second part is what you wrote, right?
Second part is what I wrote. Yeah.
So, but you posted the entire thing,
Correct.
including a link to the second video.
Yes.
And this was posted March 11th, 4:40 p.m.?
Correct?
So if we clicked on that link back then, it would take us to that video.
Yes.
I already asked you about whether you knew Candace prior to all this coming about. Is it true that you had a mutual friend of hers?
We did, yeah.
Okay, and who's that person?
Blair.
And what is Blair's role?
Blair is Blair is Candace's good friend, maybe best friend. Blair worked with me back in my radio days at Nix, 94.1. She was our show producer for a year, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
So Blair knew Candace. I did not, however.
Now that seeing how you have some experience in radio, in a radio show, especially like a morning show, there's often prank calls where somebody's employers call up or a loved one and it's all recorded. Isn't that recording a person's phone call without their knowledge or consent?
It used to be. It used to be before the two-party consent laws came into effect.
Okay.
So when that happened, the way we did radio shows changed dramatically. You couldn't do those types of calls anymore. They are still done now, but they're done with radio voice actors. So if you hear something on the radio where it's a prank and the personalities are calling out, like a War of the Roses type thing, or a whatever, a prank phone call trying to burn your buns, some shows call them, those are setups. Prior to two-party consent laws being adopted, we could do those without actors, without setting them up. It was okay to call out. We were told, however, when people were calling into the radio station, it was okay to record them and broadcast their call on the air. There was an expectation that they were being recorded when it was a contest or whatever. But when you're calling out, it was abundantly clear you have to get consent before you record.
You're saying nowadays when you listen to these prank calls, they're all staged, they're all fake?
They are.
Okay.
One of the secrets of radio.
Did you, in any point in this circumstance, when you're learning about all of this, having correspondence with Michael, did you hack into his Google Drive?
No.
Okay. Did you make any edits at all to any of these calls that you provided to law enforcement?
No.
Okay. Simply the conversion from the file format?
Yeah, conversion from the format that I had them in, or their original format, to the format that the detective could play them in and hear them in.
And Judge, I'm about to pass the witness, but I think we have some jury questions.
I think so. You could pass any questions you have down to Marshall Stanley, please, and we'll have the parties approach the bench to discuss. We have a question, and that is, when was the two-party consent law passed, if you know?
I don't know exactly. I can tell you that we had to get consent in the calls that we did on the radio, early 2000s. So I'm going to guess it was around that time, 2001, 2002. Honestly, I don't know. That's a guess.
Another question. Thank you.
Okay.
Parties can approach again. We have 3 separate questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, with your knowledge of the two-party consent law, why did you not notify the police first?
I was prepared to. I wanted Candace to have the option to do that first. I wanted her to be comfortable with the way that it was handled. I wanted her to be okay with it. Had she not been, I think I probably would have respected her wishes, but I was concerned, but I wanted her in the loop and wanted to make sure it was something that she wanted.
All right, so that might actually answer the second question,
Okay.
which is, what purpose did it serve contacting Mrs. McDonald before the police?
That was just it. And, just to clarify, it wasn't, Miss Candace and the group had interactions. Candace was a member of Nevada Court Watchers, so she was aware of what Mr. McDonald was posting. She was well aware of what was going on. She wasn't aware of the Google Drive link and what was on there and that kind of thing. So, yeah, again, it was just the courtesy of her having the final call on how to handle what happens next with this.
Okay. And the last question, with your knowledge, were you the only one to convert the audio files for the detective?
Yes.
All right. Any more questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Mr. Raman, you pass the witness.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Mr. Mueller, pass the examination when you're ready.
Mr. DiCiero, how are you this afternoon, sir?
Good, sir.
How long did you work in radio?
I started in 1992,
All right.
so quite a while.
All right. And how long were you an on-air personality with, what's your Mark Mercedes in the morning?
Yes,
How long were you there for?
through 2015.
2015 from when?
We started the show in March of '97.
Okay, so you did that show for 18 years?
Correct.
18 years. Imagine you got a chance to meet a lot of folks in 18 years doing radio.
Yes, sir.
All right? Now, you know, my colleague solicitor from you, you know Blair Davies.
I do.
All right? You know her well, correct?
I know her well from a professional standpoint, yeah.
All right, and you did know that her roommate was Mr. McDonald's now ex-wife.
I know that now. I didn't know that then.
Did Mrs. McDonald, the future ex-Mrs. McDonald, did she ever come to the radio station?
I am told now that she in fact did.
Oh, okay, so she was, you were told. You don't have any recollection of that?
No, sir, I don't.
All right. And what year did you leave the radio show?
Early 2015.
2015. Now, you were working for an attorney by the name of Alex Jabata, correct?
Was not at that time, I am now.
Okay, when did you start working for Mr. Jabata?
About a year ago, January 2019, about a year.
Now, I want to go through a few things because I'm a little confused. You reached out, and I want to understand, you initiated contact with Mr. McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Mr. McDonald had a life, you were the one who tapped him on the shoulder and said hello.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you sent over a Facebook message. This is your State's Exhibit 4 counsel. May I approach?
Right.
And this was the brief conversation between two strange men who were going through contentious divorces, correct?
You mean, what do you mean by a strange conversation?
I said this is the initial conversation between two men who are strangers, not any acquaintance with each other,
Correct.
regarding the divorce, their divorces.
Yes.
Okay? Now, that's the link he sent you so you could look at his videos, correct?
Correct.
Please show me in that conversation where he gave you permission to rummage his Google Drive for a year and a half and find whatever you found interesting and post it.
Do I show you something in this conversation where Mr. McDonald says you have the permission to rummage through my Google Drive, and I'm sorry, do what?
He gave you permission to look at the Google Drive for one specific reason, correct?
No, he did not say that.
He
Absolutely
said,
not.
sir, answer my question.
Okay.
He gave you permission to look at the Google Drive so you could watch the videos of his divorce proceedings,
There were no
correct?
caveats, there were no asterisks to it. It was, you saw the email, there were 3 email links.
Show me in there where it said, pull whatever you want out of my Google Drive and post it to the world.
Post it to the world and pull it out of my Google Drive does not exist in this conversation.
All right, so you would agree then that you were exceeding the scope of permission that Mr. McDonald gave you when you looked at his Google Drive, correct?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not, but you would agree that there's not a piece of paper anywhere in this case where it says you can pull out anything off my Google Drive and post it.
Well, as an example, if I can.
Sir, answer my question.
If somebody posts...
Answer my
Mr.
question.
Mueller, Mr. Mueller, we will not be raising our voice, myself or at any witness.
So let me answer your question. As an example, if somebody posts a YouTube link, you're not confined to that one video on YouTube, as you're free to take a look at all the videos on YouTube in that form.
Sure.
It's there, it's available.
You would agree.
There isn't anything that
But
says...
Mr. DiCiero
Okay.
and Mr. Mueller, you have to let each other finish answering so we have a full and complete transcript.
So my point is, there isn't anything in there that says, don't look at the other videos here on YouTube.
Your Honor, approach. Sir, I'm laying before you every piece of paper that the state has marked and admitted so far in this case. Show me in that document where Mr. McDonald gives you permission in writing to go through his Google Drive and post something.
I'm telling you that that doesn't exist.
It does not exist. So you would agree that your actions exceed
No.
the scope of permission
Yes,
of
I would
Mr. McDonald.
Mr. DiCiero, I remind you that you need to let him finish asking a question before you answer
I'm
it.
sorry.
You would agree, sir, that nowhere in writing is there permission to do what you did.
Nowhere in writing.
All right.
Correct.
Now, you would agree that you and Mr. McDonald aren't co-workers.
Correct.
You agree that Mr. McDonald's wife, ex-wife, was at your radio station.
That's what I'm told, Counsel.
That's what you're told. And you sought him out.
No, that's not an accurate, no, it's not accurate.
Let's talk about your professional experience, sir. 17 years of radio, 18 years of radio. You know how to edit radio, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You know how to audit or edit MP3 files and reformat them.
Yes.
Now, You used the phrase during direct examination. And the phrase you used was a long while. You had to go through, and we're looking through Mr. McDonald's Google Drive, a long while. Why?
No, I think you may have misunderstood.
No, I didn't. I wrote down exactly. The word you used was,
Please.
the exact phrase you used was, I had to go through his Google Drive a long while.
I don't think that was I don't think that's an accurate statement of my testimony.
We'll get to read back later. That's my question, please. Now, what was so fascinating to you about Mr. McDonald's divorce? You've been in family court for 14 years, correct?
I have.
All right. Why did you find, let me rephrase, have you gone through other men's divorces and looked at their paperwork?
No.
No. Just this one. Okay. Any particular reason why this particular divorce, out of the thousands and tens of thousands of divorces done in family court every year, why did you pick this one to get involved in?
I would like to answer that question. I want to make sure you're ready for the answer.
Sir?
Because you're going to object every way side. Make sure you want to know the answer to the question.
Your Honor, may we refresh?
You may. Yeah. Mr. Mueller, please rephrase your question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, these audio files that you believed were telephone calls, were you present when they were recorded?
Okay, hold on, Mr. Mueller. Are you withdrawing your previous question altogether?
I'll rephrase it. I'm gonna come back. I will come back to this subject in a different.
All right, so it's withdrawn for now.
For now.
All right, you may proceed.
The audio files that you believe were phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Were you present when the phone calls were recorded?
No.
Did you, or do you know, as a fact, when those recordings were made?
No, I don't.
Do you know where those recordings were made?
No.
Do you know, in fact, who made those recordings?
No.
Now, you don't know when, you don't know where, you don't know how, and you don't know by who. But yet, you turn that piece of information, after you've reformatted it, over to a police officer. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Mr. DiCiero, that's a human nature thing to say, mm-hmm, or
Sorry.
heads. Is that a yes?
Yes,
All right,
correct.
thank you.
Well,
Appreciate that.
let me ask you a question, sir. Did the detective ask you how you came to suspect that these were phone calls?
Did the detective ask me, say that again?
Sir, you just said you don't know where, you don't know when, you don't know how, you don't know by whom. These files now get turned over to a police detective because you believe you found them on Mr. McDonald's Google Drive.
Correct.
Okay? Did the detective say, hey, how do I know these are phone calls? How do I know where these were from?
The detective asked for copies. The
Yeah.
detective came to me, so these weren't given to me, from me to the detective. Detective asked for them, and I sent them to him.
All right. So did anybody ask the obvious questions, like, how do we know this is a phone call?
I assume that's what you're all going to address here. No, the detective and I did not have that conversation.
Did not have that conversation. There are at least 5 recordings that you saw fit to turn over to the detective. How many other recordings were there on the Google Drive?
Actual phone recordings, I think
How
that's the
many
extent.
recordings, sir? Not phone recordings.
I'm trying
How
to
many
answer your
recordings?
question. So I think everything that was on the Google Drive was turned over to the detective.
Everything on the Google Drive. How many
Everybody,
kilobytes?
let me clarify, every phone recording
Sir?
that was on the Google
A
Drive.
moment ago, you just testified that you're not sure they're phone calls, so they're audio recordings. Now, my question is, how many audio recordings were turned over to the detective?
They're obviously phone calls, but I can listen.
Sir,
Anyone with an ounce
Your
of
Honor,
let
we
me answer your
instruct this
question.
witness to answer my questions. The question was simple, how many audio files were turned over?
There were
You can
Seven,
answer Mr. DiCiero, you can answer the question regarding how many audio files were turned over.
I believe we saw 7 turned over.
7. Did you take any of Mr. McDonald's pictures of him and his kids and turn those over?
No.
Did you take over any copies of Mr. McDonald's divorce case pleadings and turn those over to the detectives?
No, but what had happened?
Sir?
No, I didn't.
Now, this Nevada Court Watchers website, correct, that you participate in,
Yes.
it is basically a gossip circle in the modern era.
No.
No? You use snarky comments, like the Stevie Bowl, that's a derogatory term for Steve Sanson, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you've posted snarky comments on dozens, if not hundreds of people's, have you not?
No.
No? Let me ask you a question, sir. There's 2 factions that watch things done in family court, correct?
What do you mean by faction?
Well,
That sounds pretty
court
intense.
watch- Well, let me ask you a question, sir.
Okay.
Do you know an individual by the name of, what's his name? What's the lawyer's name?
Marshall Willett?
Marshall Willett, thank you, sir.
That's one of your favorite names.
Do you know Mr. Marshall Willett?
I know of him.
You know of him. Have you ever met him?
I met him one time, yes.
One time.
Yes.
Does Mr. Willett have any editorial control over Nevada court watchers?
No.
Now, Mr. Willett is in a feud with Mr. Sanson, is he not?
You would need to ask him, sir.
Okay, are you familiar with the Stanson-Willett feud that was just argued in front of the Nevada Supreme Court 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Judge, I object to relevance.
That's the same.
I'll type back in if I could get just a couple questions,
You can
Judge.
approach and explain.
Certainly.
That objection is sustained.
Sir, how many uncomplimentary posts have you put on Nevada court watchers regarding Mr. McDonald?
I don't know.
I don't know, as in too many to remember?
What part did you not get? I don't know.
Sir, I'm asking the questions. Answer my questions.
And
How
your
many
answer is,
comments have you put on the
don't.
website?
No.
Mr. Mueller and Mr. DiCiero.
More
Now,
than
when I have
10?
Mr. Mueller, we're going to take a brief recess. If we could have the jury exit the courtroom, please.
All rise for the jury.
Let the record reflect the jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Mueller and Mr. DiCiero, I will not tolerate argumentative behavior or snarky remarks or unprofessional remarks in the presence of the jury, much less in my presence. If you haven't been paying attention, I will let you know that the jury is snarking and laughing based on the exchange between both of you. I am admonishing you now that if you do not stop the behavior that you're engaging in, I will hold one or both of you in contempt of court. You have a duty and an obligation to Mr. Mueller comply with the rules of professional conduct, and you are, if you haven't already violated them, you're certainly dipping right into that. Mr. DiCiero, I understand that you're facing cross-examination. I'm asking you to respond to the questions, and I'm instructing you both to make sure that you listen to the question asked, let the individual finish answering the question or asking the question before you respond. Do we understand?
Yes. Yes.
All right. We are going to, since we have let the jury go ahead and go outside, I'm going to go ahead and let them use the facilities that they need. So I didn't get to admonish them, however. So actually, before we do that, can you see if anyone needs to use the facilities? And then if not, we can bring them back in and we'll take a break in a little bit.
A couple did say they had to use the bathroom, so I'll just
All right, I'll
be
remind
waiting
them of
for
the
it.
admonishment when they come back in. We can be at ease until the jury comes back in.
Is it okay if I do the same, or is that right?
Yes, you may. We'll actually have you go into the back to use the
show where the-
facilities.
Okay.
Yes, if you could, I appreciate that.
are, Your Honor.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead and bring them in.
All rise for the jury. Jury is all present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I did not get to read you that admonishment about not talking or conversing amongst yourselves or with anyone else about this trial, or the usual admonishment about not reading, watching, or listening, or doing any research about this trial. I remind you that that admonishment stands in place throughout the course of the trial, and it is your duty as jurors to inform me if anyone has violated that admonishment during the course of the trial. So I remind you of that now. And with that, we can go ahead and resume cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Upon reflection, I don't believe I have any further questions.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Raman, do you have any redirect from Mr. DiCiero?
Very briefly.
All right.
Mr. Mueller, on his cross-examination of you, said, did you seek out Mr. McDonald? Do you remember that?
I remember that, yes.
Okay. Did you become aware of him by seeking him out?
No.
Okay. How did you become aware of him?
As we initially talked about here on the stand, Mr. McDonald had been seeking the help of others. He had been seeking the input of others through the War Declared on Family Court page on Facebook, through the Veterans in Politics page on Facebook, by posting hearing videos. We didn't post those videos, Mr. McDonald did, on YouTube, the website of Veterans in Politics, so forth and so on. He was making his case a public spectacle. So nobody in our group, myself included, sought him out.
Okay. And when you say he was asking, did you say asking questions? Sometimes I don't quote people correctly.
Was Mr. McDonald asking questions?
Yeah, when he was posting these things,
Yes.
was he just saying, hey, look at this, or was he asking for advice or input?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
And is it under those circumstances that you then direct messages him through the Facebook?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So you didn't search him out per se?
No.
No. And then with regard to the links that he sent you, we looked at a document, it's one of the court's exhibits, right?
Yes,
It was the invitation to see things in his Google Drive, right?
that's correct.
Okay. Was there folders that were given access to you?
Yes,
Okay. Was there a file given to you?
yes.
Is that an Excel document, something about a divorce log?
The log, I believe, was a Word document.
Okay.
Yeah, laying out the chronology of events in his case.
Okay. So 2 folders in one document.
Yes,
And the appeal file, folder, didn't have much in it, did it?
not that I recall. I think that was as advertised. It was limited to appellate things he was trying to put together.
Okay.
The court video folder was a different story.
Okay, and you kind of said it had everything and anything in there.
Yeah, it did.
And you were given full access to that folder?
Correct.
Now, were you given full access to its entire Google Drive?
No,
Just 2 folders and 1 file?
2 folders and 1 Word document.
And were you told by Michael, you can only look at this for 30 days, 60 days, whatever?
No,
Okay. You have some familiarity with Google Drive?
I do, yeah,
You use it?
I do.
Are you a paying member of it?
Yes,
Okay, so you pay for extra storage other than whatever they give you for free?
that's correct, yeah. Use it for my business.
Right. Can you terminate a person's access to a Google Drive? Once
Yes.
you've given them a link?
Uh-huh, you can.
Okay. Did that ever occur between you and Michael?
No,
So he never just cut off your link where it stopped working?
not that I'm aware of. No.
Nothing further?
Thank you. Any follow-up questions based on those questions, Mr. Mueller?
There you are.
All right, thank you. All right, are we release this witness?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for being sent down. State, you may call your next witness.
State called Detective Kolby, Kartchner.
All right. We're going to have this witness testify just in the abundance of caution. I'm going to have him face the jury, so perhaps it will be helpful for you to stand where that chair is next to the microphone to question him. We have, this is a law enforcement officer, and so we sometimes limit what is videotaped of law enforcement officers when they're testifying. The person in the back of the room understands that, is confined with an order not to videotape him, and in this instance, the cameras have been modified to prevent his face from being fully recognizable on the videotape. And I'm also having him, I'll instruct him when he comes up here to face you all, that way his face is turned towards you. Okay? Thank you. All right, come on in, detective. Good afternoon.
You do sound as where the testimony represents shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Please be seated, and then state and spell your name for the record.
Okay. Kolby Kartchner, Kolby, Kartchner.
Oh, so I'm gonna have you face the jury, that way you're to the side there. And Mr. Mueller, I know it's hard to see him, so you're welcome to stand over there if you'd like to have a better look at the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, when you're ready, state.
Sure, I'm just preparing an exhibit.
Okay.
Detective, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good. Yourself?
Good. What do you do for a living?
I work with Las Vegas Metro Police.
Is he sideways enough?
Yeah. Can you pull that microphone, microphone? Oh, there we go. And then a little closer to him. Perfect. There we go. And you can face that microphone and
You
face
don't have
that way.
a-
Thank you.
Don't have a blurry dot for him then?
We don't. We're not that fancy.
You work for the police department.
Yes, sir.
How long have you done that?
In 3 days, it'll be 20 years.
20 years, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so that means you started in 1990?
2000.
Oh, 2000.
Yeah.
Time's getting weird. 2000. Did you start as a patrolman?
Yes, sir.
And what do you do now?
I'm a detective now for the Northwest Area Command.
How long have you been a detective?
4 years.
And Northwest Area Command is what part of town?
That's basically Cheyenne and the 215. So it's basically the northwest side of town.
Okay, does that go from some street northward and some street westward?
Yes, we're getting ready to open up a new area command, so it's going to change our parameters basically, but it's Charleston, everything basically Charleston to the north, and basically 95, not quite to Rancho, west.
Okay, so you go up to Mount Charleston almost?
Yes.
All right, as a detective for the Northwest Area Command, do you put more investigation into cases than, say, a patrol officer?
Yes.
So you do follow up on cases that come into the Area Command?
Yes.
And in this particular case, are you the detective assigned to investigate this case against Michael McDonald?
Yes.
And was this case reported on March 29th of 2018?
Yes.
And how did that become initiated?
Typically what happens is a victim will either call the police or come into an area command and create the report of the allegation of a crime. And that will be reviewed by a sergeant, and then it will be assigned to whomever to follow up. In this case, this one was assigned to me.
Do you recall when you started to actually put some investigation into the case?
It was shortly after I received the case.
Okay. So would it be fair to say April of 2018?
Yes.
And in your investigation, who was the person reporting? So the complaining witness?
The victim, Candace, was the person reporting.
Okay. Did you contact her?
Yes, I did.
And how did you contact her?
I called her on the phone, contact her via phone.
Okay. Did you also have email correspondence with Ms. Candace McDonald?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach?
You may.
showing you what's been marked as state's proposed exhibit 7. Do you recognize the information on this document?
Yes.
Okay, there's 2 pages, please, wait a second.
Yes.
Okay, what do you recognize this to be?
This was information that was provided to me by Candace, reference our conversations. She talked about YouTube videos that have been posted by the suspect, and also gave me information on how to contact Mark DiCiero.
And what's the date on these emails?
The date is April 12th, 2018.
Okay. And this is a fair and accurate copy of the correspondence between you and Candace?
Yes.
Move for admission of exhibit 7.
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry?
Hearsay.
All right. And if I expect the documents, Raman.
Sure. If needed, I could just, this is a partial foundation, I'll solidify it, Candace. Or Ms. Mishler.
All right, I will admit it subject to link up with Ms. Ruiz.
All right, I'll refrain from public.
Thank you. So that objection is overruled for now, subject to link up.
Okay, so as you described, you had some correspondence, you talked on the telephone with Candace, there's some emails between you and her about what had occurred,
Yes.
and then you sought out Mark,
Yes.
and you were provided contact for Mark, information, phone number, email, by whom?
Candace.
And did you end up corresponding with Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Did you receive some audio files from Mark?
Yes, I did.
And how did he send those to you?
Via email.
Okay, showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 2. And is this you on the email, Kolby, Kartchner, K6632K?
Yes, that is me.
Okay, so he sent you a number of emails with files,
Yes.
and were you able to play all of the files?
At first I was not.
Okay, how did you remedy that?
I called him and asked him to reformat those and send them to me.
After he was able to reformat them, were you able to?
Yes, I was able to listen to them.
Okay. And that's on a department computer?
Yes.
All right. With regard to you eventually end up submitting a request for warrant for criminal charges in this case, right?
Yes, I did.
And this particular crime, unlawful recording of wire communications, does there have to be consent?
Given, yes, by
Okay.
both parties in the conversation, yes.
Did you ask Ms. McDonald if she had consented or was aware that she was being recorded?
I did.
Okay. What did she say?
She said no, did not give consent, and matter of fact said that because of the
Objection,
nature.
hearsay.
That's fine. With regard to the recordings themselves, you listened to them?
Yes.
Was there any indication, hallmark, notification of any kind of recording going on or consent for recording?
No.
Okay. When you submit a case, do you provide the evidence and a summation of why to the district attorney's office?
Yes.
Okay. Did you do so in this case?
Yes, I did.
In this particular case, did you seek out to interview Michael McDonald?
No, I did not.
Why did you not do that?
At Military Command, we have a policy reference. Typically, it falls within domestic violence and restraining order cases. We try to avoid the escalation of violence. For example, if we contact a subject who has been in a fight with his wife, and we call the house, and that escalates in violence, we've actually had resulting homicides based on our attempting to get further. In this particular case, although they did not live together at the time of this incident, still felt that there was a possibility of an escalation of violence, and therefore I did not.
Okay, so abundance of caution, police policy, at least within your area command, is if it's a domestic related, don't contact the suspect?
Yes,
Okay. So for that reason, there's no interview with Michael McDonald?
that's correct.
Okay. Was there anybody who, just one second.
Detective, were you influenced by any outside parties to actually investigate this case and submit something onward?
No.
Okay, so you had no powerful, politically connected people say, hey, this is something that needs to happen?
No.
Okay. Is there a lawful way to record telephone calls?
Yes.
And how's that?
Ask for, you have to give some kind of a verbiage at the front of it saying that this phone call is going to be recorded, or ask them as you talk to them to ask for consent to record the phone call. And we actually run across this a lot in our restraining order cases, where our victims, in their attempt to prove that they're being harassed, we have to advise them not to record the suspect that's harassing them, because it is illegal to do so without their consent.
All right, I will pass the witness.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Detective, you used the phrase just a moment ago, in the front of the call.
Typically.
All right. Now, you've been doing this for 20 years, though you don't look like you're old enough to.
Thank you.
One of the things about being a police officer is figuring out when someone's telling the truth, and sometimes people lie to police officers, correct?
Correct.
All right. And in fact, that's the nature of the work. People will enlist the police to do their nefarious bidding, and if you're not careful, you could be an unwitting pawn in the scheme, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and you're aware of that, and every police officer on the street very quickly becomes aware of that, correct?
Yes.
All right, now, you haven't done a lot of illegal phone call cases, have you?
No, sir.
All right.
They are unusual.
They are unusual. Now, this case was unusual in a couple other aspects, was it not?
How so?
Well, the conversations are audio files, correct?
Yes.
And they had to be reformatted, correct?
Yes.
Now, did that cause you some concern as an investigating detective?
No.
Well, that's changing the nature of the evidence, is it not? Reformatting it?
In a way, but our computers are so specific on what they will allow that it's a common problem we run into, whether it's surveillance footage from a robbery or something like this.
All right, so you weren't concerned about the reformatting. Well, let me ask you a couple questions. Did you listen to all of these audio files?
Yes.
And did you listen, and I know it might have been hard, but I gotta ask you an honest question. Did you really listen to every second of every one of those audio files?
Like play them and listen to them?
Yes, sir. I mean, actually listen to them?
Yes.
And you actually were able to pay attention to them all the way through?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual about those audio recordings? None of them began with the word hello,
That's true.
and none of them ended in the word goodbye.
That is true.
Now, did it occur to you, or the fact that there was no opening greeting or closing greeting, that maybe they weren't complete recordings?
Yes.
And you can record somebody on the phone if I call up and I say, hey, so you know, before we get started, I'm recording this, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I were of nefarious means and ill will, I could simply edit out that first part of the conversation, and then I'd have an audio file of me on the phone looking like I violated the law.
Possibly, yeah.
All right, so you occasionally experience that. In fact, you have to instruct people not to do that when they're getting harassed.
Yes.
All right, so this actually is a thing in your world.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you had 5 audio recordings without a hello and goodbye, did you think maybe I should follow up on that?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, one conversation, or maybe someone hangs up angrily, go to hell, and they hang up on them. But all 5 conversations, they don't begin with a hello and goodbye? None of them?
Lots of people speak differently to each other, especially when they're angry.
Okay, the words of love. I understand, Detective. Let me ask you a couple other questions. Where were these recordings made?
I'm assuming in the state of Nevada.
Assuming. Isn't that the word that should put all detectives to fear? Assume nothing? Isn't that what a good detective has on his dashboard?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So you assume that they were made in Nevada. As a matter of fact, do you know?
I believe they were.
That's not what I again? Do you know that they were made in Nevada?
I believe the evidence of the call suggests that they were.
All right,
There was
and-
background information happening within the call that
Who made the-
Candace was able to
All right, well, let me ask a
tell
question.
us that they were made here.
I want to get your opinion here.
Okay.
You're the 20-year police officer with experience. We'll talk with Candace, will be here in a few minutes, so we'll hear your view.
Okay.
Now, you don't know the fact that these were made in Nevada, do you?
I don't have any registrations of that, no.
Okay. Now, did you go back and look at the edit trail on the audio files? Had they in fact been edited?
I don't know how to do that.
You don't know how to do that.
No, sir.
All right, do you know when these recordings were made?
I had a window of time.
That was suggested by other people?
Yes.
Was there anything intrinsically in the recordings themselves that suggested when they were made?
Nobody said the dates or anything, if that's what you're referring to.
Now, there are in fact other ways people get reported. Back in the days when we were kids, you could have an 8-track cassette, or God forbid grandpas, he used to have the old reel-to-reel.
Yes.
All right, do you know as a simple statement of fact that these audio recordings weren't actually phone call recordings?
They sounded like phone call recordings, but no.
All right. So, when we get right down to it, sir, we don't know when, we don't know why, we don't know how, and we don't really know by whom. Nothing, correct?
I don't agree with all of that.
But you would agree that there's certainly a lot of information missing in this case?
There is some, yes.
Okay. What do you think is missing in this case?
Well, the things that are missing, that's where I relied on my victim to fill in the gaps.
All right. Now, since you had and opined a few minutes ago on the nature of the domestic violence calls, there are certain characteristics as a practical aspect of policing, you get to understand human nature pretty well, correct?
Yes.
All right, in fact, you guys are kind of Jedi Knights of psychology in the field.
We try.
We try, okay. Now, calls where ex-wives are involved, anything comes to mind, something a senior detective would tell a young patrol officer? Sometimes they're prone to exaggeration?
Everyone's prone to exaggeration when they're upset.
Okay, when they're upset. Now, did you go out and get a recording from Ms. Ruiz?
Who?
Mr. McDonald's ex-wife?
No.
Did you get a recorded statement from her, or a taped statement, so you could actually kind of bounce the details off?
We're talking about Candace, right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know her last name. No.
All right. And I know you guys are busy, but realistically, start to finish, how much time do you really think you put in this case before you submitted it for prosecution?
It actually took quite a while.
All right, what did you spend all the time doing then?
Getting hold of people, getting in contact with people, getting audio files changed over. They have schedules, I have different cases I'm working.
Well, I mean, time passes, I understand, but I mean, realistically, if you sat down, start to finish, 3 hours, 2 hours?
Oh, it was more than that.
All right. Did you get a statement, a recorded statement from anybody?
No, I didn't need one. I had audio, or I had written statements from each party.
Okay. So the tapes themselves, in the tape transcription, or the audio tapes themselves, there's actually nothing in there that definitively proves even that it was a phone recording, correct?
No.
Now, the fact that the person who submitted this to you was an expert in audio editing, did that cause you some concerns?
I don't know his background. So
Okay.
if he's an expert in that, that's new.
Were you unaware that he was an 18-year disc jockey with extensive radio and audio file experience? You didn't know that?
No.
You hearing that for the first time now?
Yes.
Did you in fact explore his motivations in submitting or soliciting you and giving this information to you?
Motivation from him?
Yes, sir.
No, because he didn't submit it to me initially. He submitted it to her.
Submit to her.
He didn't come to the police, she did.
All right. When people come forth forward to talk with the police, you always have the people skeptical eye as to why exactly they're there, correct?
I would hope there's different nature, but yes.
All right. You would agree that, sir, and just a couple last questions, I'll let you go. You would agree, sir, that there's a lot of investigation that could have been done in this case still?
No, I feel it was pretty completed.
All right, then where was the recording made?
I did a search warrant on that. We did not discover the whereabouts of that location at that time.
Okay. Then when were the recordings made?
I don't know. All I can tell you is what the victim told me when they were made.
And you assumed, that was your word, not mine, you assumed that they were in the bathroom?
Based on information within the phone calls, yes.
I don't believe I have anything further.
Thank you very much.
I'll get the court's indulgence for this one moment.
Sure.
Anything further?
Okay, thank you very much. Redirect examination.
Mr. Mueller asked you a couple questions. One of the questions was related to recorded statements. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And did you actually engage in dialogue with both of the witnesses in this case?
Yes.
So Mark DiCiero, you conversed back and forth with him?
Yes.
And Candace McDonald, now Ruiz?
Yes, multiple times.
Okay. And did you receive a written statement? So what are the ways that you can get a recitation of what happened from a witness to a crime?
Either written or an audio statement.
Okay? And in this case, did you get one or the other from both of these witnesses?
Yes, I required it.
And which format did you get?
I got written from both.
Okay, so they filled out in their own handwriting a voluntary statement?
Yes.
And they provided it to you?
Yes.
With regard to Mr. Mueller's questions about knowing when and where and how these alleged phone calls happened, you previously talked about robbery surveillance video, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when people commit robberies, be it something minor like porch pirates stealing somebody's Amazon package, or actually a strong-arm street robbery where one or more people roll up on somebody and demand their sunglasses, phone, wallet, purse, whatever they have. Are the police normally there, standing there, watching, looking at their watch, saying, oh crap, a robbery's happening at 6:58 p.m.?
No, I wish we were.
Okay, so it probably wouldn't go down if you were there, right?
Probably not.
Okay. When it happens like that, there is no law enforcement around, right?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any law enforcement around when the suspect supposedly recorded phone calls of the victim in this case?
No.
Okay. Just like the robbery, what do you rely upon to figure out how the crime happened, what evidence to gather?
Victim statements.
Okay. The victims tell you what?
Where, when, and how.
Where, when, and how. And you have to trust that they're telling you what happened, correct?
That's true.
In an accurate manner.
Yes.
Okay. When things don't add up, does it cause you concerns?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if you have those concerns, do you decide to maybe not pursue the matter further as an investigation?
Yes.
Okay. You've done that in robbery cases?
Yes.
Have people staged robberies in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And somehow you see through the nonsense and say, we don't have a crime here.
That's true.
Okay. But in any event, you didn't personally witness most of the things that you investigated.
That is true.
Okay. How many of the things that you investigate or ultimately submit charges on do you investigate? I mean, do you actually witness?
1 or 2%.
Okay.
Very, very, very few.
In your time as an officer of the law for 20 years, how many times have you actually seen a crime happen in front of your eyes?
A handful.
Okay. So very infrequent.
Very infrequent. Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Thank you very much. Any questions, follow up on based on those questions, Mr. Mueller?
No, thank you, Ms. Decker.
Okay, thank you. We're going to release the witness.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You may step down. Thank you
Wait a
very
minute,
much.
there's one last, before the second, please, one question, if it's okay.
Oh, yes, you may.
Court permission, sorry, Councilman. We touched base earlier people get on the phone and say, hey, so you know I'm recording this, and somebody says, well, I don't consent, but keeps talking anyway. What do you do?
How do you mean?
Well, I pay
Does
detective,
that
this is,
apply or does it not apply?
well, if somebody's calling up and says, I'm gonna record this conversation, and the person on the phone says, well, I don't consent, but continues to talk, now they violated the law.
No.
Right, nothing further.
All right, thank you. And actually, I'd like to ask, do any of the jurors have any questions? All right, I see a couple. Okay, good. I'm glad I asked. Don't forget to flag me down if you have those questions before I vote for this.
Do I need to write it down?
Yes, you do have to write it down. The price could have frozen. All right, Detective, you almost got to stay over there. 2 more questions for you. The first one is, did you seek cell phone records as an example for lengths of calls, texts, etc., to try and match the files?
Yes, I did. I did a search warrant actually through T-Mobile, I believe. And the problem was that the phone records were too old. They did not have that any longer.
Any follow-up questions of the detective based on that question?
No, yeah.
Mr. Mueller?
No question.
All right. And the next question is there proof either party was out of state at the time of the recording?
None that I'm aware.
Any questions? Any follow-up questions?
No, but I did have the other question. I mean, ask him what.
In regards to the first question that was
Yes.
asked? Yes.
So you're saying it was too old?
That's what they said, yes.
Too old, so those audio recordings were too old to match up.
T-Mobile responded that they only keep their files for 24 months.
No, the calls were already over 2 years old.
That's what they said. That's what they said in the search warrant that
Alright.
was returned.
Nothing further.
Detective, when did you obtain that search warrant?
It's just, I don't know, I submitted the files, probably last month. I believe it was last month.
All right. I asked questions, so I'll ask the parties again. Any follow-up based on my question?
No, yeah.
Mr.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Now you may step down. Oh, wait, let's go ahead and call the next witness, and then we'll take one more brief afternoon break before we're done for the day.
Before we close with this one, have something just outside of the presence of the jury real quick.
Okay, then we will actually then take our afternoon break now to be efficient. So during this afternoon recess, you're going to talk and converse amongst yourselves with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial, or view off on this further commentary on the trial, or any person connected with this trial, but any new information included without limitation. Newspapers, television, radio, or internet, or from or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until it is finally submitted to you. It is about 3:25, so we'll see everybody in 15 minutes. All right? 3:40.
All rise for the jury.
The record reflects that the jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Mueller, you want to object on the outside presence of the jury?
Just very quickly, Judge, I've had Ms. Ruiz on the stand at the preliminary hearing. I made reference to her testimony yesterday. It is defense's deep concern that she is filled with bile towards my client and will take every opportunity to say something salacious, gratuitous, and potentially inflammatory to the point of being mistrial. When I asked her the same basic questions I asked both of these previous witnesses, how do you know when this occurred? How do you know what, these simple questions, and I preliminary hearing has been very calm. She also says, well, I know who he is and I know he did it. Now, I'm very concerned, we're gonna get up here and we're gonna ask some very low-key questions, and she's gonna just spill something all over the courtroom just because she wants to lash out at Mr. McDonald. So we've asked the state at this time to take a few minutes to admonish her just to answer the questions. I'm very concerned that we're not gonna be able to get through this witness without a mistrial. I saw her on the witness stand at the preliminary hearing, and I'm very concerned about this.
All right, I appreciate that being brought to my attention. Steve, have you already admonished the witness about answering the questions accordingly?
Yes, and Your Honor, I conducted the preliminary hearing, and I would disagree with that characterization of her testimony.
All right, I would just ask you to remind her to make sure she is answering the questions accordingly. And Mr. Mueller, things got quite heated with Mr. DiCiero when some questions were asked of him. So I would ask you to also restrain yourself should you become emotionally charged during the course of the examination of the witness.
I'll show this, Judge.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, go ahead and everybody to cover break you can. We'll see you in about 10 minutes.
And Your Honor, you want us to go and admonish the witness?
If you don't mind.
Sure.
I think she'll let me here. Thank you.
Can I just help her? Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
All right, we have the jury waiting. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, is there going to be any objections I need to address before we bring the jury back in?
I'm not sure. Yes, Judge. I'm formally meant to object to the use of the introduction of divorce decree. I think we're just adding inflammatory material that had literally nothing to do with the,
Can I see the divorce decree?
Yes, Your Honor. And
What about it is inflammatory, Mr. Mueller?
Judge, it goes through their finances, it goes through their detailing. We're going to distract the jury with 20 pages of irrelevant detail. The question, and the only question here is whether those audio files are phone calls, and secondarily, if this Mr. McDonald made them, and tertiarily, whether they were made in the state of Nevada. Now, none of that it has anything to do with that divorce decree.
All right, and Ms. Mishler, why do you need the divorce decree?
Sure, and Your Honor, on at least one of the phone calls, they were, the defendant and Candace McDonald, they discussed the fact that the divorce decree hasn't been signed. At one point, Candace says something along the lines of, just sign the decree, I want to get divorced. And then there's a later call in which she refers to the decree as already having been signed. It helps to establish the time at which this happened. And those are certified records. I think ideally the entire thing should be admitted, so there's nothing in there that needs to be redacted, and I don't want to give the jury the impression that we're only admitting part of something. So that document is presumed authentic pursuant to NRS 52.125.
I don't think he's objecting it on that grounds. He's objecting it as being inflammatory in what way?
But just it's distracting, it's irrelevant to the issue at hand.
And I don't see how, sorry.
Excuse me, with deference to my colleague, I understand but what she's addressing is a very tertiary issue. The issue is whether that divorce decree, I guarantee if it goes back to the jury, every single one of them is going to read it page to page before they even start deliberating. And it has nothing to do with whether the audio recordings were made by Mr. McDonald and whether they're phone calls, which is the issue that brings us here today.
So I respectfully disagree. If the information provided by Ms. Mishler here in open court proves true of the phone calls, then the timing of the divorce decree does become relevant, and this establishes a timeline. In light of my ruling, would you like me to give some kind of instruction to them that this is only for purposes of establishing the timeline?
No. I'd rather just live with them reading it. I don't believe that we're adding anything to the trial, and we're slowing it down and distracting the jury, but you were my say.
Okay, all right, and your objection is noted. All right, and you can certainly lodge the objection in front of the jury if you like, and I'll just rule the same way for the same reasons, unless something surprising happens during the testimony. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in the jury.
Your Honor, I was suspicious that this occurred, but as far as pointing to this particular document, the defendant, while he was reviewing it, underlined portions of this document. So, I mean, that's probably going to draw more attention to whatever he underlined.
Do you have a copy of that document?
We don't. This is a certified copy.
Right, it has the seal embedded in it.
I want to take a look.
Sure.
Tell her to hold on real quick.
I don't think unless he objects, I don't care. There's a slight underline in one of the provisions.
Well, I understand. I actually saw the underline myself. I wasn't sure if that was there before or after. The underline is to draw attention to, or at least I think to emphasize that he has the right to visit his children. But perhaps we can print out another copy.
I can try to find it out.
don't know if we will wipe it out the way it's done, the way it's done. I'll like print out another copy. Is there going to be any objection to its authentication?
No, Your Honor, we're going to put another copy and just switch out the page, no objection.
Alright, can you give me that case number?
Your Honor, it is D-15-518905.
518, I'm sorry.
518905.
Divorce decree 7/2018, is that right?
I think what you're looking for would be about late October
It's
2016.
received 10/21/2016. I see DiCiero, was that you? All right, you want to just take a quick peek at this? It's the same one.
Okay,
This is
that's
the
fine.
one. Okay, all right. Here we go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, Carol.
Can't we just take the last page off and stick it on the back? And then it'll be certified.
No objection.
Okay, great.
Okay.
You want me to?
Oh, yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
And I'll just stick the last page on.
All right, let's go ahead and bring the jury in.
All rise for the jury. Jury is all present, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. Please be seated. Welcome back, and we're ready to proceed with our next witness. State, if you could call your next witness, please.
The state calls Candace Ruiz.
Thank you. And now here's the witness stand.
You just sound this word, the testimony you're going to give in this section shall be the truth, and the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated, and then state your name for the record.
My name is Candace Ruiz, C-A-N-D-A-C-E-R-U-I-Z.
Ms. Ruiz, I'm just going to remind you before you proceed with Mishler, if you could speak into that microphone, because everything is being recorded, we want to make sure we're capturing you, all right? Thank you, and when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Is it okay if I call you Candace?
Yes.
And Candace, what do you do for a living?
I am a teacher. I am the English department chair at Bonanza High School. I teach 12th grade English, 4 sections of English and 2 sections of credit retrieval.
And how long have you been working at Bonanza High School?
For 5 years.
And how long have you been a teacher?
For 8 years.
And are you familiar with a person by the name of Michael Lee McDonald?
I am.
And do you see Michael Lee McDonald here in the courtroom today?
I do.
Would you please point at him and describe what he is wearing?
He's here in a white shirt and a blue striped tie.
Jacket or no jacket?
No jacket.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
It will so reflect.
Thank you. And who is the defendant to you, Candace?
He is my ex-husband.
And how did you meet the defendant?
I met him in 2008 at a country line dancing bar through a mutual friend.
And when was that?
2008, November of 2008.
And when did you get married?
September of 2010.
And while you were married, what did the defendant do for a living?
He was in IT, a professional IT. So he worked on computers and at one point worked at it's called Geotab. It was like a tracking device company where they would track fleets of vehicles, like let's say UPS. He could fix computers, build computers, and he did a lot of like freelance side work as well.
Did the defendant ever serve in the military?
No.
And do you and the defendant have any children together?
We do. Mason, who's 8, and Malia, who's 5.
And boys, girls?
Malia is a girl, and she was born in July of 2014, and then Mason, 8-year-old boy, June 16, 2011.
And when did you file for divorce?
July of 2015.
And when did your divorce become finalized?
October of 2016.
Was your divorce case handled in the family court here in Clark County, Nevada?
It was.
And since you and the defendant have 2 children together, were there also child custody issues that were handled in the family court here in Clark County, Nevada?
Yes.
And around the time of your divorce, did you have any telephone conversations with the defendant?
Yes.
And regarding those conversations, who typically would call whom?
I mean, at that time, it would depend. If it was a weekend that he had the kids, he might have the kids call me, or if it was something that was pressing, I would call him. You know, it would kind of go back and forth.
Okay. So it's fair to say it would vary?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes you would call him, sometimes he would call you?
Sure, yes.
And since your divorce, have you remarried?
I have.
What is your spouse's name?
Joseph Ruiz.
Okay. And I'm assuming that that's why your last name is Ruiz, you've taken his name?
Yes.
And how did you meet your current husband?
He was my Bible study teacher years ago. Probably about 12 years ago. We were really good friends back then, and then just lost touch over the years, and then reconnected after the divorce.
And at the time of your marriage to the defendant, was your last name McDonald?
It was, yes.
And so I want to turn your attention specifically to the period of August 1st, 2016 to the end of November 2016. This is kind of prying, but around that time period, was your daughter Malia having some significant health issues?
She was.
Can you describe those, please?
Sure. At the end of August of 2016, well, even prior to that, she was having some issues with constipation. And we had seen her pediatrician, and, you know, we were just trying to figure things out, like adding things, taking things out of her diet. But in 2016 of August, she had what's called a rectal prolapse.
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, I know it's really graphic, so I'm sorry to basically what happens is a child strains too hard and they literally push their actual rectum out of their body. So that happened, and obviously, you know, I'm not a medical person, so I was terrified, and I didn't know why that had happened initially. So I took her to Summerlin ER immediately. She was in pain too, you know, which was made me really nervous as a mom to have to number one see that, but also to see her in pain. So I took her to the ER at Summerlin Hospital. The ER doctor came in immediately. The good news about the rectal prolapse is that it had retracted, so on its own. I was made aware by the doctor that if there was not a retraction, then they would have to manually push it back in. And so basically the ER doctor explained to me there that this is common, it happens. I mean, it's not super common, but it does happen in children with constipation. She did an exam on Malia, and even during the exam, Malia's demeanor it was better, and a lot of that is because once the rectum retracts, there's no more pain. So she was, basically the ER doctor told me that at that point, I needed to follow up with her pediatrician. The ER doctor mentioned her diet, and I had even explained, you know, she was constipated, and we were trying to figure that out. They suggested that she be on a daily dose of what's called Miralax. It's something that pulls water into the intestines. It can be dissolved in water or juice. So they suggested that she take that. And then also it was mentioned to me that a large culprit of kids' constipation could possibly be gluten or dairy. And it was suggested to me at the ER that we should cut those particular things from her diet. And obviously, you know, at that point, this is like, and aside from that, explained that the only way to heal a rectal prolapse is to let it heal on its own. It has to form scar tissue, and the goal from what the ER doctor shared with me was to make sure that her bowels were soft. Because as long as her bowels weren't soft, or were soft, and she was not straining, then she wouldn't push the rectum out again. So it was really important that we keep water for her at all times, that, you know, the ER doctor had asked how much juice she was having. So, you know, to limit that, but that we should still be giving her apple juice or prune juice, pear juice. Those are things that kind of like soften the bowel. And just to watch, potentially taking out gluten and dairy as one of the suggestions that might help keep her bowel movement soft.
Okay. And don't worry, I'll move on from this topic soon.
Okay.
But you mentioned gluten and dairy. Was she determined to have intolerances to one or both of those?
Yes, both.
Gluten and dairy?
Yes, and throughout that entire process, we met with the pediatrician, who also affirmed gluten and dairy were like the most, like triggers for constipation. So again, I was hearing it a second time, like, okay, this definitely needs to be out of her diet. The pediatrician then suggested that we see a gastroenterologist just to be sure that there were no other issues, like, for example, cystic fibrosis could be an issue. Literally, the gamut, you know, could be Crohn's disease, just to make sure. He didn't feel that she did have those. However, as a precaution, he said anytime I ever have a patient that has a prolapse, I always have them see a pediatric GI, and that pediatric GI also happened to be a surgeon. So I took her to the pediatric GI, and same situation. Gluten and dairy was suggested to be cut from her diet. I had already done that at that point, and she was doing better without gluten and dairy. And the pediatric GI, again, explained that this was not like a surgical process, because as far as the rectum is they don't do surgeries for this type of thing. And again, the best way to heal it is making sure that her bowels are soft, she's not straining, she's properly hydrated so that water is getting into the intestines to like move everything. And then it was suggested also from the pediatrician that I see an allergist to see if there might be some other food sensitivities or allergies that she might have. So I did that as well. I took her to an allergist, and we also found out that not only did she have intolerances to dairy and gluten, but she's also allergic to oranges, strawberries, wheat, tomatoes, and raspberries. And it also seems that, I mean, even now, just as this process has gone on, anything with citric acid in it bothers her. So she's got a whole slew of allergies. So obviously at that point, I cut all of that stuff out of her diet. And then it was also suggested to me by the pediatric GI to keep a food journal. So just to see if there was like a correlation between her constipation and like a certain food that she was eating regularly.
Okay, let me stop you there and just ask some follow-ups. So around, it sounds like it's fair to say that you had to take Malia to a number of specialists.
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you had her allergy tested.
Yes.
Around when was it that you had her allergy tested?
October of 2016. Actually, well, I saw the pediatrician because she had her prolapse the last weekend of August. So I saw the pediatrician immediately after that. May have been like the first week of October, and then every other subsequent test or doctor that we met with after that would have been in October of 2016.
And so while this was going on, you already testified that around this time period you had phone conversations with your ex-husband, the defendant.
Yes.
And sometimes would you discuss the status of Malia's health related
Yes.
to the rectal prolapse and
Yes.
the other things you talked about?
Yes.
Okay. And now switching gears a bit, are you familiar with a Facebook site by the name of Nevada Court Watchers?
I am.
And how did you come to be familiar with it?
Well, I was contacted by a stranger on Facebook that I didn't know, and that particular stranger had asked me, or just like sent me a message and said like, hey, did you know that all of your divorce hearings are on YouTube, and that there's this group called Nevada Court Watchers talking about your divorce case? And I'm like, no.
Okay. And after you got that message, what did you do?
Well, I looked it up, of course. I went to Facebook and I'm like, because I want to know, like, if someone's talking about this or if that was true. I mean, I don't know. Like, again, this is just some random person that messages me. So I looked up Nevada Court Watchers, and what that person said was true. And then I looked up the videos on YouTube and found that every single one of our divorce hearings have been uploaded to YouTube.
And are you familiar with an individual named Mark DiCiero?
I am.
Okay. And how did you come to be familiar with him?
Well, at the time, I think he must have been, I don't know if he was running the group on Nevada Court Watchers, but he seemed to be posting about my case personally, so I'm sort of like, well, I want to know what's going on here. So I don't remember if I may have reached out or he may have reached out via Facebook, but I just was really, number one, concerned that all of that information was out there, and number two, I'm also like, why are you so interested in my case? I don't know this person. In terms of, like, just as a sidebar, he worked at 94.1 and my close friend was a DJ, or she would like do overnights there. So they did work together and I knew that she worked with him, but on a personal level, you know, I don't know this person. And I also don't know why he's talking about my case or why he's so interested. And so I wanted to know, and also I wanted to take those videos down. I didn't want our personal information to be out there. There's very identifying features in those videos that talk about where I work and my children's names, and you know, I'm like, do you have any, so in the message I'm asking him like, how do I get these videos down? Like, I don't want my information out there for the world to see, and not to mention these people go to YouTube and then they look me up on Facebook and they like message me and talk to me about like very personal things about my life that, you know, I mean, divorce is awful and you don't want anyone to know any of that. And so that's how I got acquainted with him. I'm like, I want to know what the purpose of this group was, first of all. Second of all, why is everyone talking about me and my personal business? And also, just, I'm like, did Mark do this? I don't know. Like, I don't know. And so I think that was my first contact with him, was just wanting to know why and if there was anything I could do to get my information off of his Facebook page and off of the internet.
Okay, and you said a lot, so I want to go back to a couple of things. So when you talk about the videos that you wanted, that you saw and that you wanted to come down, you testified that you saw those on YouTube, correct?
Yes.
When you saw them on YouTube, did YouTube indicate what channel, for lack of a better word, had posted them?
I don't know if it was. Over time I've learned what it was, but I don't know if it was, there was a man named Steve Sanson that Michael was friends with. I don't know if it was his personal, or he runs another page called Veterans in Politics. I don't remember which, but it was one of the two. He had two separate YouTube pages, which obviously at that point I'm like further investigating, like, who is this person that I do not know that's posting my personal information, and like, what is this organization as well.
And so prior to this random stranger sending you a Facebook message, were you aware that hearings from your family court case were being posted on YouTube and on the internet? No. And you stated that that you and Mark had a mutual friend. So prior to you becoming aware of Nevada court watchers, had you ever met Mark DiCiero in person?
I did once. It was at the radio station, and I'm embarrassed to say, but Hanson, the band, was in town, and they were doing like a radio interview, and my best friend like happened to love Hanson, and I was a fan too. So she was like, "Hanson's coming into the studio. You should come." And I'm like, "Oh my god." So it was like brief, you know, like he was in the studio, and I remember like shaking his hand and saying hello. But aside from that, that's the only interaction I ever had with Mark outside of, you know, years later, because I think I may have been 19 or 20 when that Hanson moment happened. And then again, this is, you know, I'm going through a divorce in my 30s, so but that's it. That's the only interaction we had.
Okay. And so turning back, has Mark DiCiero ever like directly messaged you on Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And approximately when did that happen the first time?
I mean, there have been messages back and forth, but in terms of like anything where I remember the most was around October. Well, I guess it would have been March, maybe, or April of 2016.
Okay. And so I wanted, at some point, did Mark ever contact you via any means and inform you about audio files that he had in his possession?
Yes.
Okay. And about when did that happen?
I would say March of 2016.
Okay.
Or 2017, sorry. It's hard to remember.
Okay. Is there anything that would refresh your recollection about the time
I think
period?
the police report, because the day I filed the police report would.
Okay. Do you remember writing a voluntary statement for the police?
Yes.
Okay. And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
For the record, I'm showing the witness her voluntary statement that's been shown to defense counsel. And Candace, I don't want you to read out loud anything on this sheet of paper. You can just look at it silently just to refresh your recollection as to when this would have started. And when your recollection's refreshed, just hand it back to me.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you remember now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll repeat my last question. About when was it that Mark DiCiero contacted you about some audio files in his possession?
March 2018.
And did he at some point provide you with copies of those audio files?
Yeah, I learned that he had been given a link to a Google Drive, and it wasn't just audio files that were in that Google Drive as well. There were other personal things. So like, for example, copies of my journal entries, like pictures of them. Maybe there was a card that I had written Michael for an anniversary. There were 5 audio files, which were recordings of telephone conversations. And then there was another recording between him and our son, Mason, who was about 4 at the time. And then there was another recording between.
Okay, and I just want to cut you off there, because just right now I just want to talk to you about the audio files. Okay.
Okay.
So those audio files. So Mark DiCiero did provide you copies of those.
Yes.
What you just referred to. Okay. And did you listen to those audio files?
I did.
Okay. And when you listened to those audio files, could you tell what they were?
Yes.
What were they?
They were conversations between myself and Michael.
Okay. And when you listen to them, could you tell approximately when those conversations happened?
Yes. All of those conversations happened in October of 2016, right around the time when Malia had her rectal prolapse and we were going to the doctor and all of that.
Okay. And so were they recordings of just regular conversations, or were they recordings of telephone calls between you and the defendant?
They were telephone calls between the two of us.
And Your Honor, may approach with State's Exhibit 1, it's already been admitted. And Candace, do you recall listening to a disc of audio files in my office last week?
I do.
And I'm handing you State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Okay. And what is it?
It's the audio telephone conversations between Michael and I that I listened to in your office. I signed my name to it and I put the date 1/3/20.
Okay. So you wrote your name and the date on it?
I did.
Okay. After listening to the files?
Yes.
Okay. Does this disc contain audio files that fairly and accurately depict the recordings of the telephone conversations that you received from Mark DiCiero?
They do, yes.
And permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
And Candace, so I'm going to play this disc, and I'm going to play the 5 audio files that are here on State's Exhibit 1. Some of them are short, some of them are longer. And then after each one plays, I'll ask you some questions, okay? Court's brief indulgence, I just want to make sure the volume's correct. Sure.
And I'm, yeah, of course, to pay your costs.
Yes, why are you calling?
Listen, can you please just pay your portion of the Malia's gonna be kicked out of daycare. So please just do that.
Can you let me see the kids more? Like,
Okay. And for the record, that was file number 01 from State's Exhibit 1.
All right, and before you proceed, I apologize for interrupting you. I know that was a short clip, but could you all hear that okay? Asking the jury, yes? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Candace, did you recognize what the audio file I just played?
Yes.
Okay. And was that one of the telephone conversations that we've been talking about?
It was, yes.
Did you recognize, so it was a telephone conversation?
It was, yes.
Did you recognize the voices on it?
Yes.
Okay, whose voices were they?
Mine and Michael's. And then in the background, you can hear our daughter. She's saying, Dada.
Okay.
Hi, Dada.
So there really is a third voice. But...
There is, in that one, yes.
And was that your daughter, Malia?
It was, yes.
Okay. How old would she have been at the time?
2.
And do you remember where you were at the time of this phone call?
Yes. We were leaving the daycare. I was calling Michael because the daycare had informed me that he had not paid his portion of the daycare. And I had just had a conversation with the director and I'm just like, at that time I was like, I can't pay this. And she basically said, well, if you can't, she's gonna have to be taken out by the end of the week. So I had made a phone call to him to ask him to pay. We were leaving the daycare. I had already put Malia in the car and just was asking him to please pay his portion of daycare.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, so I think at some point in the audio file you say Malia is going to be kicked out of daycare?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And was it your expectation that the defendant would be paying a portion of the daycare cost?
Yes, it had been ordered by our family court judge.
Candace, now I'm going to play audio file 2 from Exhibit 1.
Hi, baby.
Why did you cancel the appointment, Candace?
Michael, you didn't tell me that you were making an appointment for her. And what is the point of going in there?
I want to make
No, I did not know. Okay, that's fine. Who is she going to see today?
I got referred over somewhere, so.
Okay, whatever. Next time you need to tell me because I'm not kidding you, Michael.
She had a prolapse.
I know, I'm aware, Michael. Did you give her gluten this weekend?
No, I didn't. Not at all. And she was.
Okay, well, you need to make sure that she's hydrated and that she's had plenty to eat. Okay, and I'm going to tell you now that she's got something going on and we have to get to the bottom of it, but it's not what you've been accusing Joe of. So you need to stop.
This is very weird what Joe is doing.
Michael,
You sure, Candace?
it has nothing to do with Joe. The CPS worker has told you that.
He
The
hasn't
person that you
told me
told us.
that. It's not the
Yes,
same
they
guy.
have told you that, and they're closing the case because you're a lunatic. Like, you have to stop. Malia has a issue with her diet that we need to get to the bottom of. I'm having her allergy tested.
Candace,
Okay?
who's watching the kids? Can you see that?
What do you mean, who's watching the kids? They go to daycare and they go to school.
No.
Nobody babysits, Michael. Nobody babysits.
You let Joe
I don't leave them. Michael.
What? Joe's dropping the kids off? Like he's sleeping?
Michael, Joe is not a pedophile. Okay? Joe is not sitting in my house, but even if you were, it's not your business.
He's not at your house. Like, don't lie to me, Candace.
No, he's not at my house, and it's not your business.
It's my
He's not a
business.
pedophile. He has not hurt the kids. No, he has not.
Candace.
Okay? You need to stop it. Okay, well then go to the doctor and find the answers that you need. I have all the paperwork backed up that she's got a constipation problem and that's what's causing her prolapse. You have to make sure that she has water and juice at all times. She has to have soft bowel movement.
You don't think that could happen at all? Like, come on. Like, it's scaring me.
Michael, it has. The first time she had prolapse, I wasn't even dating Joe, and I've told you that already.
But you're letting your brother watch her. You're letting
Michael, my brothers are not even in town. They're away at college.
Why don't you let me watch them, Candace, instead of a babysitter?
Because you're incompetent and you're not a good father.
Wow.
And you're not a safe or sane person to accuse somebody of doing something that graphic and disgusting makes me concerned.
How could you say that?
Okay?
I'm their father.
Because you're a psychopath. Who would ever suggest that? I'm telling you, all the paperwork has told you that she has a gluten allergy. She's constipated, thirsty, and too.
Yeah. Candace, like...
Okay, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, but next time she has a doctor's appointment, you need to tell me. Because I'm concerned that she's not at school.
Yeah.
Like, you need to tell me that next time if she has an appointment. That's where I'm thinking. Like, just don't want to sit there and tell me that she has an appointment.
Okay, listen though, Candace, like, what... Like, I just want to make sure they're safe. Like, I should be watching them. I'm their
Then go
father.
talk to the doctor, because clearly you don't believe anything the CPS workers say. You don't believe anything the police are saying. You don't believe anything that our friends are saying. You don't believe anything. So it doesn't matter what I say. Go and talk to the doctor about it.
What? Please, just let me watch the kids. Like, let me be in their lives. Like,
No, I'm not going to let you watch the kids. You're not a safe person.
If I...
You're not a safe or sane person, unfortunately. I wish that would be the case. I wish I could trust you, but I can't.
And Candace, since this was a somewhat longer call, I'm going to ask you more questions about this one.
Sure.
First, whose voices are we hearing on that call?
Mine and Michael's. At the beginning of that, I was saying hi baby to Malia because she was in the background.
Okay. Okay, that's
She wasn't with me. It was his weekend. He had her. She was saying hi in the background. And so that's why I was saying hi baby, you know, because she was saying hi mommy in the background.
Okay. So that's why you said hi baby at the beginning. You were talking to Malia.
Yes.
And did I hear you correctly? You're saying that that the defendant actually had Malia with him at the time.
Yes.
And during the course of the call, I heard you say the word appointment. What appointment were you talking about, and why was that an issue?
So Michael had made a doctor's appointment at their pediatrician's office for that particular Friday. The pediatrician's office had called me the night before to confirm, but I didn't know about any appointment. So I was like, oh, I didn't schedule an appointment. And they were like, okay, we'll go ahead and cancel it. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, well, maybe I was gonna do shots or something, I don't know. But at that particular day, I couldn't take him in for shots or whatever. So I was like, oh, maybe I just need that appointment. So I canceled it. And then that Friday, the daycare called because Malia's supposed to be at daycare, and they have a policy about, you know, like us letting them know if our child's gonna be absent. They would do like credits and things like that if, you know, we have a certain amount of sick time or whatever. So I got a call from the daycare and they were like, Malia's not here. And I'm like, what? Because I just thought it was like a regular day, you know, I thought she's gonna be at daycare. And so he had taken her out of daycare to try to take her to that appointment. And then obviously because that appointment had been canceled by me, which I just didn't know that there was an appointment, that was the nature of the conversation. So I had called on my lunch break because I'm like, well, first I wanted to know where she was and like what was going on. And second, you know, I mean, it's his right, you know, he's their dad. If he wanted to take them to the doctor, that's fine. If he needed a second opinion, I had seen all the specialists, I felt like I had all the answers I needed, but in terms of like, you know, how he felt as a parent, he felt like he needed to take her, that was fine. He needed to just hear it from the doctor, that's okay, you know. So, I don't know, I mean, I just called him because I'm like, well, where is she, like, what's going on, like, why is she out of school right now, and like, what were you doing? And I think he was frustrated because I think he thought that I had canceled that appointment on purpose, but again, I didn't know. And because my phone number was the number on file to call for confirmation, and I'm thinking like, did I schedule an appointment? I canceled it. So it was never any, you know, big deal if he wanted to take her. I just needed to know to tell the daycare, she's not gonna be at school, and here's why. For, you know, credit purposes.
And let me ask you this, so when you talked to Michael about the issue with the appointment, did he tell you that he took Malia to the doctor and he found out the appointment was canceled?
He did, yeah.
Okay. And would that doctor have been here in Clark County, Nevada?
Yes.
And, okay, and I also heard some references to you dating Joe. Is that the Joe Ruiz you refer to as your husband now?
Yes.
Okay. At the time you were dating, or
yes.
He was your boyfriend?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the defendant talking about that he thought was going on with Joe?
He had expressed to me that he thought that Malia's rectal prolapse was caused by penetration, and I was shocked by that because I'm like, what? First of all, like, I took her to the ER, I took her to the pediatrician, I took her to all these allergists, I took her to a surgeon, like, no one ever mentioned anything like that. And so, obviously, I'm thinking, like, okay, it's her diet, we gotta adjust her diet, like, not to mention, like, the prolapse is horrifying to look at. And it was happening frequently, and so, you know, we had to address those issues and make sure that that's what was happening. And so Michael had gone, I'm like trying to, okay, so first he accuses my boyfriend at the time of molesting Malia, and then he accuses my brothers. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not what's happening here. He, you know, made a report and felt like that was what was happening. That was investigated and that case was closed because that's not what was happening.
Okay, let me ask you a couple questions about the things you just said.
Sure.
And I know this is difficult because we're talking about your daughter who was 2 at the time. When you say that the defendant was claiming that the defendant was claiming that Malia's rectal prolapse could have been caused by penetration, and by penetration, was he saying sexual penetration?
Yes.
Okay. And was he stating that sexual penetration could have been caused either by your boyfriend or your brothers?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned, I think you mentioned just now the case being closed. Are you talking about some sort of CPS case?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say it was closed, like what do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, anytime there is an allegation of sexual abuse, CPS has to investigate. So CPS came to my home and they did a well check. They went to both the daycare and our son's school. They met with Joe. They looked at every single medical record. They spoke with the pediatrician. So they went, down the list to make sure that that's not what was happening. And then at that point, the CPS woman was like, this is not happening, and we're aware. So she closed the case under, it's called unsubstantiated, and she closed that case. But then there was a second report made to the police after, by Michael, stating that he believed that this was happening. So police came to my house and they did yet another well check. And I explained to the officers then that CPS had investigated, that I had just been told by the woman that the case was unsubstantiated, that it was going to be closed, that I would receive a letter in the mail stating that. And he looked into the records while he was in my home, and he was like, he, obviously like talked to my kids, and then he was like, can I see if there's food in the, fridge? And so I let him look around. He looked in their bedrooms. He asked me if my boyfriend was there, and I'm like, no, he does not live here. And I even gave him the contact information for Joe. I'm like, Joe's already talked to CPS. Here's his phone number if you need to call him. And he said that he didn't feel that that was necessary to call Joe because he had seen that it was unsubstantiated. And then the police also closed that case as well.
And so the rectal prolapse that Malia had, did that first start happening before or after you started dating Joe?
So I didn't start dating Joe until after she had had her rectal prolapse. And, just to be clear, Joe is never alone with my kids. It's not appropriate. They were 2 and 5, and I would never leave them with him. We were friends before, but that doesn't mean that I would ever leave him, and that's what I was trying to explain to Michael, this is not happening. I am extremely protective of the kids and their well-being, and I meant what I said in that phone call, that nobody was watching our kids. I was a single mom. I was trying to just survive the divorce. And then we've got this child with a very serious medical condition. And if I'm being honest, it was disgusting to look at. And it was very hard for me because if it ever did get pushed out, we would have to put gloves on and put lubricant on that glove and manually push it back in. And it wasn't comfortable for her, and it wasn't comfortable for me. And it was just an awful process. So, for him to suggest that, and I'm like, okay, well, are you working with me with her diet? If you're feeding her gluten, and I'm not, and this is still happening, this is probably what's happening here. But for him to have suggested that was happening made me feel really concerned, and also confused. Why would you ever say that if, the doctors have all said this, CPS has said this, the police have said this, why? Again, you need to hear it from the doctor, go see for yourself, talk to them, ask them the questions that you need to ask them that will give you that peace of mind to know that this is not happening to our daughter.
So a couple of follow-up questions on that. So clearly at the time of this phone call, and which you already testified would have been in October 2016.
Yes.
So around that time, clearly the defendant had visitation rights with Malia because he had her in his custody.
Correct.
At the time of this call. What exactly was the custody arrangement at the time of this phone call?
So at the time of this arrangement, Michael had 2 weekends a month. He had the 2nd and 4th weekends of the month. That did not go into effect until October because up until that point, there was a different custody arrangement. So And he didn't have custody. He had no custody. He wasn't seeing the kids at all. And so I know for sure that they took place in October because those first weekends that he had him would have been the second weekend of October and the last weekend of October, which would have been Halloween, which I discussed in the phone call with him. And then after that, which was to be his next weekend, was the last time that he saw them. And he did not see them that weekend in November. So all of these had to take place in October because then after that last visit, in the last weekend of October, he did not have custody from then on out.
And the custody arrangement that you're, and the visitation arrangement that you're describing that went into effect at the end of October, was that the arrangement that was stated in your divorce decree?
Yes, second and fourth weekend of the month. And it would have been, his first weekend would have been that second weekend in October. So, and that's how I know because there was no custody before that, there was no custody after that time. So the only time for me to have known and for him to have the ability to take her to the doctor would have been October.
Okay. And so pursuant to that custody arrangement that you've described, would the defendant have been allowed to take Malia or Mason outside of Nevada?
No. Not without written permission. And in the decree of divorce, it stated that we had to provide an itinerary, there had to be 30 days notice, both of us had to agree on that, and we had to have addresses and locations to where the kids would be, and I didn't receive any of those at all, ever. So.
You never received any notification that the defendant was taking either of your children outside the state?
No.
Court's brief indulgence. And I think we will move on and play audio file number 3 from State's Exhibit 1.
I've done it already.
I promise you, I won't be there any at all.
Okay, are you gonna pay child support like you're supposed to? Are you gonna return my journals and my fucking grandmother's lamp? Basic shit, Michael. Basic shit you can't even do.
I can't, okay?
Then fucking do it. Sign the decree. I want to be divorced.
Can you let me see my kids, Candace? Like, please, let's do custody.
Are you listening to me? You show me in good faith that you're going to pay me the correct amount of child support, that you're going to have clothes that fit the kids, that you are not going to feed our daughter gluten, that you fucking stop harassing every person in my life. Then maybe I would be more willing to let you see this.
Would you ever give me joint custody, Candace?
No.
Like, no?
Fuck that. Not until you do what you're supposed to do.
What, if we've given you $1,200 a month, Candace, I can't afford.
Yeah. Okay, well then, I'm just gonna go to the DA. Because you don't have a fucking choice. So you do it, or I make you do it.
Please just let me see my kids more. Please, I'll be willing to.
You're not listening to me. You're acting like a child.
Candace, I just want to see the kids. I didn't get to see them for 75 days.
You're not listening to me. I'm going to tell you right now, you will not see them more than 2 weekends a month until you do what you're supposed to do.
Okay,
Period.
Then what? When I start doing that, what? Can I see them more? Will you work with me on stuff, Candace? What, can I bring
I was more than 100% willing to work on you. But I'm telling you right now, Michael, all of that stuff has to be in place.
So you can date fucking Joe Ruiz, Candace? Like, can you promise me that Joe Ruiz won't be around my kids alone, Candace? Mason told me a bunch of... Mason said he was. He's taking them to the park alone. He went in the room with Malia and shut the door, Candace. That's not true. Are you folding laundry?
None of that is true.
You spending the night there? Like,
the one time that Joe and him played Pokemon Go, I was there.
He said you weren't there, Candace.
Michael, he's 5 years old.
Candace,
He's concerned because you're pumping him for information.
Joe Ruiz, Candace, really? Like, you used to tell me how crappy this dude was. Please don't do that, okay?
Okay, well, Michael, I loved him, and we are moving forward in a relationship.
You loved him? Like, really? What happened with Nicole? Like,
Nicole is crazy. I told you that.
Candace, I love you, okay? Like, I wish I could love you better. Like, I fucked up, okay? But I wish I had another chance, all right? Like, I don't want...
That shit has failed. You had lots and lots and lots and lots of chances.
Joe,
Too
Ruiz,
many chances.
is he moving his cousin in with you and all this shit? Like, please, Candace.
No, he's not moving in with me. Like, give me a free break.
Candace, please don't date that guy, all right? Like, I swear, I'm different.
It's too late. It's done.
No, please, okay?
You're not different. You're still not even doing the basic things, which shows me that you haven't changed at all. You can't even do basic things.
I've been really hurt.
You cannot even not see our daughter sleeping. You can't even just return my journal. That's all I want. I just want my stuff back. I want to be done. I want you to sign with the tree.
Okay, you want to be done. I know you just want to be done, Candace, but is that truly what you want? Like...
Yes, it's 100% what I want, and I don't really understand why you don't get that.
Because
I don't want to be married to you anymore. How more clear can I make that? Like, I'm done.
Don't date Joe Ruiz, Candace. Like, holy shit. Like,
it's too late. I'm already with Joe.
Why? Why, Candace? Like, that guy, like...
Because he's a good man, and
he's a good man. Like,
great for me, and he's a great person.
Candace, how could you say that when you say all this shit about him before? Like, really? Like, it scares the shit out of me as around my kids.
It's crazy.
Candace, he's crazy too. Like, he's worked at a comic book store. Like, come on.
Okay, he doesn't work at a comic book store. He works for Bank of America. Do you know anything about him? You don't know anything about him, Marketplace.
Please, Candace, like, don't date that guy, all right? Like,
it's not your business who I date. We are not married anymore.
Candace, I just want to be my kids, like, you know, and
Okay,
I want you to be okay, all right?
Then I'm good. I'm great. I'm the best that I've ever been. I'm the happiest I've ever been.
How could you not let me see? How could you not let me see the kids for 75 days?
How could you not follow the rules? How could you be such a freaking stalker? Like, oh, I don't know.
I'm not a stalker, Candace.
Yes, you
I've
are.
been leaving you alone. I haven't been able to talk to you in a year, you know, or
Okay.
months, you know.
Listen, I'm not willing to negotiate with you right
Okay,
now.
I won't be
If you want to see the kids more, then you need to do your part, and that's it. Like, that's my limit.
Okay.
You don't do what you're supposed to do. You don't do what the judge ordered, which is pay me the correct amount of child support, return my property, finish the house shit. You don't do any of that.
I have the
kids more than 2 weekends a month.
Candace, I have the house stuff ready. I need you to sign it, okay? Can you sign it for me?
I'm not going to do anything without my attorney present, and from what I understand, your attorneys aren't working with you anymore.
I don't know what they're doing. Listen, though, I don't want to pay thousands of dollars for. I have to, Candace, I have to go appeal to all these orders and stuff. It's going to take years, okay?
Well, then have fun with that then.
No, I just want to see.
Do what you're supposed to do.
Me and you could just work this out between us.
You're on drugs. I will never go back to you ever as long as I live.
No, okay. All right, that's fine. If you really don't want to ever be with me again, that's okay.
I don't ever want to be with you.
I wish.
You hear me clearly. I don't ever want to be with
you. I know, and it hurts the hell out of me because I still have feelings for you, okay? And I'm sorry.
Stop it. Oh, stop it.
I do, Candace. Like.
Listen, you are such a liar.
No, I swear I haven't dated anybody, Candace, after that girl.
You really think that I would take you back when you can't even do basic things for our kids or for what the judge ordered? You really want to show me you changed? Start doing your part. That's how I will know that you've changed, is when you stop being a psychopath and you leave my family alone and you leave my friends alone and you do what the judge ordered.
Okay.
Simple shit, Michael.
But would you ever come back, Candace?
No, I'm never coming back to you.
No,
I'm
ever.
never coming back to you.
There's no possibility.
It's over.
I would. Please, Candace.
There's no possibility.
Yes, there is.
At all.
I've been seeing Frank. I've been praying so
I don't
much.
care. Michael, you have not changed. You're exactly the same way. You're not following the rules. You're not following what the judge told you to do. You're still fighting. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like,
I don't want to fight anymore. Okay, I really don't want to
do what
fight.
you need to do. Michael, I would be so more willing to work with you if I felt like the kids were safe.
They are safe.
They had clothes that fit them, that Malia wasn't being fed gluten, that you took her allergies seriously. You made her very sick. You understand that?
Candace, are you sure it wasn't Joe, Candace? I'm so scared.
Oh my God, I wasn't even seeing Joe when the first prolapse
weren't seeing him at all. Like, what this just happened? Like, what, a month?
Yes,
Like,
this just happened in the last month.
how did you even get involved with him, Candace? Like,
It's
please.
not your business.
Like,
It's not your business. What's happening between Joe and I is not your business.
Joe, really?
It's not your business.
Candace, like, please, I can't fathom it. Like,
I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It happened, and that's it. That's all I have to tell you.
please don't go with that guy, Candace. I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever it takes. Remember when you said I want you back? Like, fuck today. Like, I want my family back,
Candace.
Candace.
What are you talking about? You're such a fucking liar.
No, I'm not.
How many times have you said that shit? And then you made
I've had lots of
completely against what you said. Like,
Candace,
you're a liar.
no.
You're a psycho.
No, I just
You're
need
a liar.
I need some kind of commitment from you, Candace. Like,
No, there's no commitment. You don't have any part of me anymore. You know nothing about my life. You will never have me back.
I just, please, I want to be in my kid's life as much as possible,
Okay.
Candace.
Well, then do what you need to do.
But where's
Do what you need to do.
Are you at school right now, or are you with Mason and Malia?
It's not your business. It's not your business.
Well, where's the kids
not
at?
your
Just tell me
business.
just tell me where the kids are at then.
They're at school.
You took today.
That's where the kids are at.
Did you take today off or something?
It's not your fucking business. My life is not your business.
Yeah, Candace, listen to me, okay?
My life is not your business. My life is not your business.
Okay, I know. All right, just please. All right, I want to see my kids. I want to do what's right. I don't want to fight
Then
anymore.
do what you need to do. Then you need to do it. You need to stop fighting the case. You need to start doing what the judge ordered you to do, and I'll be more willing to work with you each time.
Okay.
And if you can't do those things,
What does that
then
look
you
like,
only
Candace?
see them 2 weekends a month.
Yeah, that it
Michael,
sucks so
I would let you take them during the week. I would let you have more time with them. I would be more willing to work with you if you showed me that you know how to care for young kids.
I do, Candace. I took care of my kids.
Okay,
Candace.
so when I tell you that her doctor told me that she's severely allergic to gluten,
I will not feed her gluten. I'll make sure, okay?
gave her gluten, Michael. Is that showing me that you know how to care for our child that has special dietary needs?
Okay, I swear I won't give her
Ethan
any
is
gluten.
allergic to oranges, and you gave him orange juice, and he came home with a rash.
Really?
You don't fucking care.
Yeah,
If you could show me that you could buy clothes that fit our kids and not send them to school. No, you haven't done shit for them.
I have so many clothes.
You haven't taken them to one fucking doctor appointment.
Yeah, I have.
No, you haven't.
And
You
Jen,
are delusional.
you called the
You
cops.
are delusional.
You called the cops on me for the stupid dog bite. I'm sorry that happened.
You know what? I would have done it again because you told me you were not going to get medical care.
No, I did, Candace. I took care of it.
You did after they forced you to.
No, I did before
And
that.
I just want to let you know that I will continue to do that. So every single time you have a doubt about taking them to the doctor and you don't do it, I will call you. Yeah.
Don't do that, Candace. Okay, like listen.
Then do what you need to do.
I will. Just work with me, Candace. I'm your dad. You know how much I love you.
I'm not going to work with you until you start doing what the judge ordered. So when you're ready to make an adult decision and follow what the judge told you to do, then I will be willing to work with you.
Candace, you know this judge.
You will not get one extra day. You will not get any extra time until you show me that you know how to take care of the kids. That they have new clothes that fit them, and they have shoes and socks that fit them. Michael, you sent Malia home with a pair of baby infant socks that I bought when she was 3 months old. That is not clothing that fits her.
Okay.
You need to be a responsible person.
I am, Candace. Like.
You are not. When you can show me, you don't even know what fucking size they wear. You put shorts on Malia that were 12 months. I don't care if she peed before she left the house. You do not have clothes or socks or underwear that fit them. You fed Malia gluten after I told you that she had severe allergies, and due to that, she had a small prolapse again. She has no issues at all since she's been gluten-free. None.
Okay, Candace.
Except for when she came back from your house.
I'll make sure that they're not fed gluten. Okay, like. I just want to see my kids more. I'll pay you whatever.
Then do what you need to do. Pay child support, Michael. Pay for medical.
Okay, I haven't seen one medical thing, Candace, at all. Like, how am I supposed to know how much to pay for that?
I've submitted all of that. It's all been submitted to the court. And I'm telling you right now, I am going to go file with the DA. If you don't pay me today, I'm going down to file with the district attorney.
Can you wait till Friday, Candace? I don't get paid till Friday. Please. please, I don't
I
have...
will wait till Friday. I will wait till Friday. If I do not have 875 plus 220, I'm filing the DA Monday morning.
Wait, how much?
875 plus 220.
Plus 220, where's the 220 from?
Michael, you know what it's for.
The
It's for the medical, and you know
Can
that.
you send me a bill for that? And can you downgrade that?
No,
Like,
I'm not sending you anything. No. I've already showed you a screenshot of my pay stub, and that's all you get. And because it doesn't matter anyways, because the minute that I file from the DA, they're going to pull it from your check anyway. Plus all the back child support that you owe. So make a choice. Make a choice.
Candace,
I'm not going to play games with you anymore. Like, grow up, be an adult, pay your fucking bills. Like, do what you have to do.
I will. I want to see my kids, though, Candace.
When are you going to return my lamp? When are you going to return my journal?
You can have all the little freaking lamps back. Can I have my mirror back and the shark moth, please? Like,
No, I'm not giving you that back.
no.
You kept everything else in the house. I'm not giving you that shit back. So,
And you took everything you wanted, right?
Michael,
What? You did, Candace.
you are going to pay everything that she ordered you to pay. You're going to pay half of my credit card debt. You're going to pay for
Can I see what the credit card debt was? Like, how'd you rack up 12 grand?
You don't get any of that. You are going to pay me, or I'm going to file with the DA. So make a choice.
You know that's against the law, right? Like, what she...
Make a choice. Make a choice,
Okay.
Michael.
All right, I will.
See, this is what I'm saying. This is exactly why.
Okay, what can I do to see my kids more? I'll pay you the money. Okay, I'll pay you the money. Can I see the kids more? Can I please see them during the
Not
week?
till it's done. Not till it's done.
Okay.
Not till it's all done.
Okay,
Not till
so
it's all done.
listen, I'll pay you that amount, and then I'll see the kids this weekend. Can I see them during the week, like on Wednesday or something?
No. You're not seeing them this weekend. This is not your weekend.
Yeah, this is my
Second and fourth
weekend.
weekend of the month. No, it's not. Second and fourth weekend of the month. This
No,
is the first weekend of the month.
No, this is my
It's
weekend.
defined by Friday. It's defined by the first Friday of the month.
It's
The
every...
first Friday of the month is the first weekend of the month. Therefore, this is the first weekend of the month.
No, Candace, it's every other weekend, Candace. I get them this weekend.
No, it's not every other weekend. It's the second and fourth weekends of the month. So look at the decree. You will not take them this Friday. If you do, school police will arrest you. So go ahead.
It's every other weekend. What are you talking about? This
It's
is
not
my weekend.
every other weekend. It's the second and fourth weekends of the month. Go look it up.
What? Are you
get them
fucking
2 weekends a month. You get them 2 weekends a month, and that's it.
Candace, this is my weekend with them. What do you mean?
No, it's not. Go look at the decree. Second and fourth weekend of the month, defined by the first Friday. The first Friday is considered the first weekend. The second Friday is the second Friday of the month. You will have them next weekend, and you will have them on Halloween.
No, my birthday. We're getting them next weekend, and then I'm...
Okay, go look at the decree. I'm not arguing with you. If you show up on Friday to pick up the kids, school police will arrest you. They already have permission from the court. So make sure that you know what you're doing.
Really?
They will arrest you, and you will go to jail. So make a choice. Like, I'm not playing with you anymore, Michael. Like, these are my limits. I have been pushed past my limits.
Is Joe pushing you to do this shit too? Because he's been
Oh my God. No. This is what's called healing. This is what's called boundaries. This is what's called getting out of an abusive relationship.
Look what you're doing to our kids.
You have no control over me. Our kids are happy.
They're not
Our
happy
kids are
that,
fine.
Candace. You won't even let me say goodnight to them. Can I say at least say goodnight? Like,
okay, well, when you start doing what you need to do.
You know, Mason wanted to say goodnight to you. I'm like, okay, go ahead, Mason. Call your mom. Like,
Okay, just let me know. Let me know when you're ready to start doing what you need to do.
will you let Mason
And you
say
can follow
goodnight?
directions, and you cannot say psychotic things to kids. And maybe I'd be
I'm
more
not
willing.
saying anything to the kids, Candace. I'm just asking, hey, how are you doing? They're telling me that.
Okay, you know what? Listen, I'm not going to argue with you anymore.
I'm not.
Do what you need to do.
I will,
I'm
Candace.
filing with the district attorney on Monday. If you go and pick up the kids on Friday, you're going to be arrested. So make sure you know what the decree says. Because the school has copies, school police know what's going on. Everyone is watching you. Okay?
Candace.
Everyone's watching you.
Listen, though.
Everyone's watching you.
Is there any way, Candace, like, there's no, you really
No.
want to date Joe Ruiz? Like, really?
Yeah, I'm probably going to marry him too. So.
Holy fucking shit, you're going to marry that motherfucker? Come on, Candace. Don't do that. Please. Like, really? That guy? Candace. Please. Like, he is the worst guy for you. Like, why would you do
No,
that?
he's not.
What? Unless he's, like changed, like, you don't remember all this shit?
He's
What?
amazing.
Oh,
He's
my.
nothing like you.
He's 15 years older than you, too, Candace. Like,
He's not. He's 8. And that's not
please, Candace, don't do that, okay? Like, let me back in,
Who
okay?
I date is not your concern.
Let me back in, okay?
No, you're never getting back into my life. If you want to see the kids more, then you need to do what you need to do. We need to finish the stuff with the house. You need to return my property. You need to start paying child support. You need to buy clothes that fit the kids. You need to change Malia's diet.
Okay, I can
When
do
I start seeing those things, I will know. I will know when all of those things have changed. I will notice.
And then you let
I
me
will
see
see what they're wearing.
you'll let
I
me
will
see
see what their mental state is. You are not to talk to our children about anything regarding our divorce or about who I'm dating. You are not to question Nathan. You are not to make him feel uncomfortable.
You've been making him uncomfortable with Joe. Candace, you've been confusing him. He's been spending the night at your house and stuff.
He doesn't stay the night at the house. He's never been alone with the kids. All of this shit you are making up.
That's what he told me.
The only time that Joe comes over is when kids are in bed. Joe has come to
When the kids are in bed, and they sneak in there.
The kids don't even know him as my boyfriend. They know him as my friend. Because it is not acceptable for them to get attached to him yet, till I'm sure where this relationship is going.
Candace, really?
So I can assure you that the decisions that I'm making are healthy and they are safe for the kids.
Listen, Candace, I'll
Do not talk to Nathan about Joe.
Listen, forgive me, Candace. I'll forgive you.
If confusing him, it's you.
Candace, he's spending the night there. Mason knows, okay?
He has not spent the night. He has not spent the night one time with me. We are living a godly way, okay?
Yeah, he's fucking you too. Yeah, Candace, listen to me.
Okay. Because you know about my life.
No, Candace, listen, I'll forgive you for everything.
You're right,
Forgive
no,
me
you
for
don't
everything.
know. You don't know anything about my life anymore.
Just forgive me, Candace.
And you don't get to know anything about my life. Are you going to do it? You haven't changed. You haven't done one thing. You haven't done one thing for our kids or for what you're supposed to do. You haven't done one thing.
It's been really
Not
hard,
one.
Candace, okay?
I don't care. I don't feel bad for you. You're an adult. Deal with it. Get some therapy. Get some help.
For kids for 75 days and see me, Candace?
I feel bad that you are their father, and that I made the choice to marry you, and that unfortunately they're going to have to deal with your crazy ass for the rest of their life. That's what I feel bad about.
I'm not that guy, all right? You know that.
You have not made my life. You made my life a living hell since we've been apart. But guess what? You don't have power over me anymore. You have no control over me. I don't feel guilted by you. I don't feel bad about my decision.
With Joe, too?
Being away from you.
You feel happy with Joe? Really, Candace? Come on.
I'm 100% satisfied with Joe.
Satisfied. Please, Candace, like, just come back, okay? Let's just stop all this. Like, we can do that, all right? No, I swear it will be different, okay? I promise you, I'll treat you like a queen, okay? Candace. No, I will treat you like my queen, Candace. I will never ever do anything. Candace, please.
I'm sorry, it's comical.
No, it's not comical. This has been on my heart, okay? Like, I've just been...
Okay.
No, I fucked up so bad. I gave up. I started giving up, and I shouldn't have. I love you.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. Candace, don't laugh at me, okay? Like, no, it's not funny. I love my kids. I loved you. Like,
I know that you love them, but you do not know how to take care of them.
I know how to take care of my own kids, Candace.
Okay, well then, why don't you show me that?
And I wish I would have known how to take care of you better, okay? And I fucked it up. I fucked it up, okay?
Okay. Yes, we know. That's your fault. Yes.
Okay, is there any way, like, please, there's got to be some way, Candace. There's got to be some way that we can be a family again. Like,
I'm telling you now,
no
There's
way.
No hope.
No hope.
There's no hope.
Yes, there is.
No, you need to go on with your life.
Candace, God hates divorce, okay? He doesn't want this.
Oh my God. Okay,
I would
you'll have
treat
a
you
chance
so
with
good.
someone else, but you won't have any more chances with me.
Candace, you're the mother of my children. Like, please, I haven't done anything.
Please, I'm seriously allergic to bullshit. Like, just stop.
No, I'm not bullshitting you, Candace.
Your ways
I'm not bullshitting you.
and you text me don't work anymore.
Candace, I'm not bullshitting you. I will do whatever it fucking takes. Like, I swear to you.
Okay, do what it takes then. Start doing what it takes.
Okay, please just let me see the kids more at least as a start, okay?
Okay, when you start doing what it takes, when you've paid me
Yeah, because you
that
don't,
everything is done.
I don't want to go through freaking
Then,
appeals and everything else. Like, this is going to
Okay,
take
well,
forever.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, you don't have any choice. Like, on the 91st day, the house was mine to sell. So,
What?
I don't know what else to tell you. On the 91st day, the house was mine to sell.
Yeah, you need to sign these papers, Candace, so you can be
Okay, well then go talk to my attorney, because I'm not doing anything without my attorney. I'm not saying shit without my attorney.
Okay, that's fine.
So you let me know when you want to do that. You let me know when you're going to retire my stuff, drop it off to my attorney. Okay? You let me know when you're ready to start paying child support, because I'm going to tell you now, I will go after you, and they will put you in jail if you don't pay. And appeals take a long time. And you didn't even file it properly anyway, so it's going to be kicked back. So it doesn't matter. Like, it's filed improperly. You can't even appeal anything until the decree of divorce is finished, but you wouldn't know that because you haven't talked to your attorney. Because they're done with you. Just like everyone is.
Just wanted to see how much time was left.
We are almost done, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure the jury's okay if we go a little over 5 to finish this call. Everyone's shaking their head yes, someone's saying no, so let's go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It's done with you. Yeah, I've been done. I don't really know, like, moving out, getting a new house, moving into a new relationship. I don't know what part makes you think that I'm not done. But guess what? I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not intimidated by you anymore. Oh, yeah, you have. Yeah, you have. But we don't need to go into that because
Almost done there. Okay, thank you very much. All right, it is just after 5 o'clock. We are going to break for the evening. So I do need you to come back tomorrow. The parties could approach briefly. We're going to talk schedule and let you go. We're going to start tomorrow at 10:30. I want the jury know this as well. We're going to restart tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. I was supposed to have another calendar recovery, but one of my colleagues stepped in, so we can start at 10:30 instead of the afternoon, which is good news. Let's see here. During this overnight recess, you are not to converse amongst yourselves with anyone else in any subject connected with this trial, or read, watch, or listen to any report of or commentary on the trial, or any person connected with this trial, or any information, including without limitation, newspapers, television, video, internet, or form or express any opinion or information connected with this trial until the case is now submitted to you. Thank you very much for your attention this afternoon, and we will see you tomorrow at 10:30.
All rise for the jury.
All right, the record reflects that the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Ruiz, you are still under oath and currently a what we call live witness. So I'm going to ask that you don't discuss what's happening in the court or what the testimony was here today, and then we'll resume the testimony tomorrow at 10:30. I'm sorry, I'm standing, I just need to stretch my legs. And so you're free to leave for the evening. You might want to just pause in the area there with the jury, catch the first set of elevators, and then you can go just to make it a little easier. Okay? All right. The record reflects that the witness has left the courtroom. She is in the vestibule in between the courtroom and the exit doors. Anything we need to address outside the presence of the jury and or the witness?
No, nothing to see.
All right, then I will see everyone at, the calendar is in 2 tomorrow. Of course, I say that, and then something happens, let's hope it goes smoothly. If you all could be here at 10:15, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, Mr. Mueller, I do have I think we still have some instructions from the last trial, so perhaps take a look at those and see if anything are going to change. I'm not sure.
My short-term memory is falling.
So it's fine, I don't remember, actually, I don't remember either, but there's been several trials between that one and this one, so I'm much like you. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You can give me about 2 minutes, guys. 10, all right. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.